Good afternoon, everybody. I will give this interpreting announcement in both English and Spanish. Muy buenas tardes. Voy a dar este anuncio sobre la interpretación en inglés y en español. In order to provide language access, we will be providing simultaneous bidirectional interpretation in English and Spanish. If you are bilingual, you don't have to click anything. If you are not bilingual in English and Spanish, you will have to select your language in order to hear the interpretation. If you are on a laptop or desktop, at the bottom right of your screen, you will see a globe icon that says Interpretation. Please click on the globe now and select English. If you're using an iPad or a phone, locate the three-dot menu and select Language Interpretation, then select English and click Done. And when it's your turn to speak, please remember to be loud and clear. Thank you. And we are also offering American Sign Language, ASL, for this meeting. If you will be using ASL interpretation, please use the Zoom app on your computer, tablet, or phone to join this meeting. If you joined this meeting through your web browser, you may not be able to see the ASL interpreter at all times. Buenas tardes, esta reunión contará con interpretación simultánea bidireccional en inglés y en español. Si usted es bilingüe, no tiene que presionar nada. Si usted no es bilingüe en inglés y en español, tendrá que elegir su idioma para escuchar la interpretación. Si está usando una computadora, verá un icono en la parte inferior de su pantalla a la derecha en forma de globo que dice Interpretación. Haga clic ahí ahora y seleccione Español. Si está usando un iPad o su teléfono, localice el menú de 3 puntos. Haga clic en Interpretación de idiomas, elija Español y Finalizar. O si está en inglés, dice Done. Cuando sea su turno de hablar, por favor recuerde hablar con voz fuerte y clara. Gracias. Are there any questions with regards to interpretation? If there are none, then I will go ahead and ask the host to add me as an interpreter and we may begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Maldonado, will you now lead us through the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Please stand, place the flag, your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I announce the action that was taken in closed session, I have a couple things that I'd like to share. As we begin this meeting tonight, I again want to thank all members of the public who are joining us on Zoom while we, the board and the cabinet, meet in person for the third time. Again, all precautions have been taken, including social distancing, masking, ventilation, and COVID testing in the last few days. We are trying to refine and improve our technology to make this meeting happen, and I thank you for your patience as we may hit a bump in the road from time to time. I also just want to remind everyone at the beginning of the meeting of the expectation of the way that we communicate with each other at board meetings, especially that this is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting, and therefore all comments should be directed to the board and not any individual on the board or any individual on the cabinet or any individual in the public. And of course, all comments must be respectful, tolerant, and never involve hate speech of any kind. And finally, I want to start the practice of taking a 10-minute break during board meetings at or around 8:30 p.m. So the next item is the announcement of closed session action. And for item number 5, closed session action, I would like to report that the board unanimously approved Steve Venz for the position of Director of School Performance and Student Outcomes. The motion was made by Ms. Capps and seconded by Ms. Munoz. And with that, I would like to turn the meeting over to Superintendent Maldonado for your report.
Thank you very much, Board President Ford. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening and for being so patient as we also transition into our new way of meeting in person. And as we master our technology challenges, we promise to improve and make progress, not perfection. So evening, board members, again, we are returning to in-person school in junior high school and high school. It was announced today that our county has reached the red tier. And therefore, we have decided to go forward with beginning Thursday, March 18th and Friday, March 19th for Group A and Group B. We see this as the right time to get our students back on campus, even if for just one day before heading into spring. This will give students and adults in the system an opportunity to get acquainted or sometimes reacquainted to their campus, but also get a sense of all the health and safety protocols that will become second nature to all of us soon. On another topic, I want to let the board know that we recently received news that Santa Barbara Unified has been awarded a specialized secondary grant, also known as SSP, by the California Department of Education for our students in grades 9 through 12. When the state released this grant opportunity, Ms. Tiffany Carson, Maria Larios Horton, Dr. Patricia Madrigal, in collaboration with Sofia Rubalcaba from our translation unit, put together the application. And we did this in the thought that we have so many students in Santa Barbara Unified, 48% of them who are native Spanish speakers. We know firsthand that they can provide such a valuable service in translation and interpretation services. We also know that this celebrates, supports, and sustains their many assets to prepare them for a career in this evolving industry. Last year, language services represented a $2 billion industry in the California economy alone, and globally this industry is estimated to go to $56 billion in the 2021 year and years to come. You'll be hearing more about this grant opportunity, the development of the translation and interpretation pathway for our high school students in future meetings. I do want to thank the many partners and organizations who wrote in support of the translation interpretation pathway when we wrote the grant, and who will continue to work with us to develop and offer students this pathway as a work-based learning opportunity. Lastly, I want to thank another set of partners, our partners at Public Health, Lompoc Valley Regional Center, Cottage Hospital, and Sansum Clinic, along with many of the pharmacies and some of you board members who've been volunteering both to get us information and help folks get vaccinated in our county. To date, we've been able to vaccinate 73% of our 2,100 employees, either through having their first vaccine round or have an appointment to get vaccination. 16% are waiting availability for a vaccine appointment, and 11% have declined. And that's with a 97% response rate of our employees reporting this data back to us. We are also going into spring break next week, as you know. And while we're going into spring break the following week, I would just like to ask all of us in our community, starting with myself and others, to commit to thinking about how every single one of our choices impacts others as we make plans for being in the week of spring break. Even though we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, we are still in the midst of the pandemic. It is not over yet. I ask that we all choose wisely. We cannot let our guard down and we must continue to take care of each other to keep our community safe. I want to end with a small collage of pictures that have been sent in to us to celebrate many of the things that are happening as we prepare for reopening in secondary, and as our staff are so grateful and happy to get vaccinated. And I want to ask Ms. Trujillo to go ahead and start to play that collage and show that we are ready and will continue to be ready. So thank you to Principal Brock and Principal Woodard for those achievements and sharing with us those happy moments with their staff and students. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was so uplifting. And I want to thank you, Superintendent Maldonado. You made it clear once again that you and the staff are 100% focused on the 2020-2021 goal of safely returning our students and staff to in-person instruction and ensuring outstanding communication with our students, staff, and parents. And now we'll continue with comments from board members and correspondents. Ms. Munoz.
Yes, and thank you for joining us as we are here in the month of March. I'd like to make a comment about National Women's History Month, where we annually are all encouraged to honor the role of women who came before us and fought for equality among all races and genders. And right now, in terms of spring and seeing how we're doing better regarding the COVID rates, I'd like to see about our commitment to education, diversity, and also encourage safety during spring break, that it's worth it to stay home and stay safe so that we can continue on this path. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Capps, please.
Thank you. Mostly what I've been corresponding about is vaccinations, and I'm so thrilled to hear that we're now at 73% of our staff as a volunteer out at Cottage, not nearly as much as President Ford has volunteered. It was just so joyful to see on Thursday so many familiar Santa Barbara Unified faces as they got their shots in arms, including Ms. Carey and Mr. Hio. So I just, with that encouraging news of 73% of our staff, and the potential CDC changing their guidelines of 3 feet for students, I'm excited about our report so we can dive in, because again, mostly what I've heard from parents this last week was excitement that their kids are back in class. I can speak from experience, but really an eagerness to make it more than the 2 days, as we've discussed, and that encouraging news and that study showing that 3 feet might be sufficient for safety of all children is really encouraging. And I look forward to diving into that more in the agenda, but just grateful to the enthusiasm that's out there and our staff that are making it such a priority to get those vaccinations. Thanks.
And thank you. Ms. Alvarez, please.
Big thank you to all the teachers, the parents, admin, Ms. Maldonado, and the students for being so flexible. I am extremely happy that elementary's back, and can't tell you how excited I am that the secondary will be going back this week as well. I received many text, phone calls today of parents who are very grateful that their students are going back to school. So thank you to everyone for making it possible. And thank you to the students for being so flexible, and we're very happy to have you back. Also, I want to give a big thank you to the Santa Barbara Educational Foundation for their efforts and their donation to give sweaters, to give jackets to our students. Thank you so much. We appreciate that from our heart, and we're very happy to have you as partners. So thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Alvarez. Well, first of all, I want to announce that it is with much sadness and also very sincere congratulations that I tell you that Assistant Superintendent for Business Services, Meg Jeté, has officially announced her retirement at the end of June. I have known Ms. Jeté for almost 15 years, and I know, as many of you here tonight also know, that she has been instrumental and so valued in helping our district weather, persevere, and even triumph through things like state financial chaos, local disasters, staff and student superintendent changes, funding changes, relationships with ever-changing government personnel and regulations, unforeseen expenses, and now the pandemic. So Meg, we are so grateful for your work and for your leadership. A little applause. But you're still with us for a while, so hang in there. I also do want to just echo that this is really a sweet night for me. Yes, I've been volunteering at the cottage drive-through vaccination clinic since January, and I just had one goal in mind, was to work hard so that we could get our teachers and our staff vaccinated and ensure that our county returns to the red tier. And it has been such a fantastic experience. And as Ms. Capps said, the last 3 days were really wonderful because there were hundreds and hundreds of staff members who were very grateful and very emotional when they got their vaccinations. And it made me feel like I feel today, which is very grateful and very emotional. I know that our county has a lot to go through still, and yet we will have a lot more freedom when it comes to dining in restaurants and bars and theaters and gyms and church and museums, pools, even amusement parks, but nothing to me is as important as getting our students in K-12 back to in-person school. It really has happened. Santa Barbara County has stepped up, and we can now focus on implementing a quality instructional program and activities in hybrid and providing an outstanding summer learning recovery program and planning for 2021-22. So thank you to everyone. And I'm reminded of a quote of the most successful recording artist of all time, and that also she is a beautiful woman during Women's History Month. Beyonce has said, if everything was perfect, you would never learn and you would never grow. So to all of you, we will continue to learn and to grow even as we seek perfection. So with that, it is time for public comments for non-agenda items. And this is when you have an opportunity just to have the public tell us their thoughts. I don't know offhand if we have any comments. Ms. Trio, are there any public comments on non-agenda items?
Good evening, President Ford, members of the board. Yes, we do have 4 public comment on this item. I will start naming the 4: Sheridan Rosenberg, Celeste Barber, John Morse, and Roseanne Crawford. We'll begin with Sheridan Rosenberg.
Thank you. Good evening. I just want to point out that when you accepted your seats on the board, that essentially, you've agreed to just sort of be lashed to the mast, so to speak. That this strange and new policy about hate speech is nothing more or less than really a Brown Act violation. It's to inhibit criticism of the board or speech that, even if it's truthful, is perceived as disrespectful. And I think that it's something that really shouldn't be announced prior to the meetings. I think it's really insulting, and it's meant to inhibit speech. On that note, I too am very concerned about a safe return to school. We all are. I still haven't heard that the district has come up with a plan for what it's going to do to protect students from predators, past staff people, those that we may or may not know about. I think that it's time also to publicly break ties with Ethnic Studies Now, the organizations, out of respect for the community and what we now know has transpired. I think it's really an important thing to do for students, for the district, and also for the community at large. And another thing that really troubles me is the recordings of the Zoom meetings they don't show. I'm looking at it right now. I'm speaking and it's a black screen with my name on it. However, I don't know why that we're not seeing your faces. So I would respectfully ask that Mr. Rickman go back to those old board meetings and restore to the original state when it was recorded live, and not have this black screen with the speakers' names on them for public comment. I think that's really unnecessary, because our names traditionally were listed in green up in the top bar. We should see you at all times, especially now that we're not in these meetings in person. But thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Next, we have Celeste Barber.
Can you hear me there?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to address public comment as protected speech, as sacred protected speech, and remind the board that public speech can never be constrained by any policies that you pass. Public speech, including during public comment, especially during public comment, is protected by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, as you are aware. It's also protected under the Brown Act. And I would just like to let you know that 2 years ago, the attempt was made to constrain me. In fact, they were successful at a City College Academic Senate meeting. I attempted to make public comment. I was respectful, even though I was critical of an individual, which was my right. I addressed my comments to the people in that room as I was required to. I was threatened with arrest. The meeting was shut down. I eventually had to file a lawsuit against the college. You may ask Craig Price about that. The college realized that I was right, that my rights had been violated, and they settled with me beforehand, before we went to trial. I would also like you to know that I didn't ask for a penny and didn't receive a penny. I was just concerned about protecting our constitutional rights. So I would, I'm not going to ask, I'm going to demand that you follow the law, that you uphold the oath that you swore when you took office. This was your first action as board members, to uphold and defend the United States Constitution, and that especially includes the First Amendment. Thank you very much for your time. And by the way, I'm so happy to hear that our high schoolers are going back. This is wonderful, wonderful news. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Morse.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. I'm John Morse. I'm a member of Fair Education Santa Barbara. I'm also a practicing attorney. I'm here to express some concern about the quote hate speech rule that you're attempting to impose. Now, I note that this was brought out very quickly after Sheridan Rosenberg publicly criticized you for allowing a known sexual predator to be on campus among students, even after he had been convicted of a criminal offense. Hate speech, this is not hate speech. It may be that you hate what's being said, but that does not make it hate speech. What is said was respectful and it was to the point. And I would remind you that we do have a First Amendment. It does protect free speech. And I would remind you that we are not intimidated by this attempt to intimidate. However, we believe it is intended to intimidate and that some people might be intimidated by it. And we would request that you withdraw that hastily conceived statement and certainly not bring it up every board meeting. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Roseanne Crawford. Ms. Crawford, can you hear us?
Hi, Roseanne Crawford. Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. I'm disappointed that this board did not approve the Thoreau Charter School and simply stipulate with conditions. I'm disappointed when your voting resulted in a tie with no discussion at minimum of a motion to extend them time or to take into account or acknowledge your absent board member was not present to vote, which allowed a tie to occur, automatically disqualifying their application. Questionable process. You could have given them some time to correct the deficiencies you found, all fixable, and if taken out of the action item due to the tie, they could have extended some time here to work on this. This is a group of educators that had worked over a year to offer the district a school of choice. This experienced group of educators, their board pedigree hailing from Star King Workshop Program and the Santa Barbara City College's excellent early childhood education program. Yet you rubber stamped meta, the ideological concept and experiment you will throw children in that has no track record or accountability and have not held the curriculum to the same rigorous requirements because the stakeholders are almost exclusively your staff and stand to benefit with extra funding for this new program. What a conflict of interest affecting the children you claim to educate. It has been proven that early immersion is a time when children developmentally develop their most highest language acquisition skills, and yet this program aims to deny native Spanish-speaking children English in their early years. Some of these students will never catch up with their English skills and may deny them opportunities. Those that master English early will benefit from, such as Spanish speakers that want to enroll in Thoreau School that is targeted all in English. And they have been welcomed by Thoreau's outreach. The children have all different backgrounds and abilities and would benefit from their creative grouping of their concept model. Please stop the double standard, honor the children, honor your work as board members. This is divisive and it's not inclusive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. President Ford, that concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. As it is 7:10, we should move to our regularly scheduled COVID-19 report. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to Superintendent Maldonado.
And I'm going to get us right into it with Dr. Wagenek, and I'll be closing the report. Dr. Wagenek.
Good evening, President Ford, board members, Superintendent Maldonado. I bring to you our 17th COVID board report, and it has officially been about 1 year since our first report was brought to you, and it's fortunately with excitement tonight. Again, affirming that there are a number of requirements that we needed to meet in order to safely return students to school, and we have met all 5 of those requirements as guided by the Drivers for School Reopening that we adopted about 11 months ago. Next slide. So here's our COVID update. We, like the rest of the state and the nation, are experiencing a drastic drop-off in the number of cases. And so our total number of cases, you can see there, 136. 97 of those have been staff cases, 39 are student cases, 25 of those in high school. We have not had a transmission on district property since the winter surge in January. And so that is despite the fact that we continue to have cases, none of those have been transmissions on campus. And again, our peak week as a district was January 11th through 15th. So it's been 2 months since we hit our peak in terms of the number of cases reported in 1 week. And now I'd like to turn it over to Susan Klein Rothschild to give us our update from the county.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to join you tonight and share good news. This map shows what was, as of this morning, we were still in the purple tier. I'm happy to say that as of noon today, Santa Barbara County is now officially in the red tier. And you can see the metrics on the left side there. Our adjusted case rate is 7.7, unadjusted is 8.5. Our positivity rate is 3.3. That's of all people who take COVID tests, what percentage of them are positive? Nice and low, 3.3%. And the health equity metric is 5.1. So note on that map, it shows us purple, but that was before noon. We are now officially in the red tier. Next slide, please. And this shows you the metrics of how we have gone from our adjusted case rate. Again, on the left is a year ago. We had our blip in the summer. We had a very high rate after the winter. And you can see we're down on the right-hand side at 7.7. Notice that the red has grown. The state increased the numbers for the red tier based on how many people had been vaccinated in our state. So the red tier used to start at 7, but now it starts at 10. So we're officially into the red tier based on our adjusted case rate. Next slide, please. This is the framework. So these are the numbers we need to meet to be in the purple tier, widespread, or red tier, substantial, orange tier, moderate, or yellow tier, minimum. Notice we are in the red tier now. Our case rate is between 4 and 10. We're at 7.7 right now. Our positivity rate is at 3.3, and that is actually in the orange tier. And our health equity measure of 5.1 is in the red tier. So we are solidly in the red tier and even one measure in the orange tier. So this is really good news. I would just like to remind folks it could change quickly. So please, please, all of us continue those good behaviors and habits and protocols, wearing face coverings, continuing physical distance. Those are the things that help us keep these numbers low and give all of us more freedom to open businesses, to have students at school, to be in a social and a public environment in a safe way. So please keep that up. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Onward. So these are some of the big decisions that differences that happen between the purple tier and the red tier. So many businesses would have one requirement in the purple tier, and they now have a different requirement in the red tier. So an example is retail. They could have 25% indoors, and it goes to 50% indoors. In terms of schools, most of the requirements and the expectations are the same. The one big difference, as you well know and has been well stated here, is that secondary students can come back to school on campus. Really a big deal, really important. That means all the children, all the students in Santa Barbara County can come back for in-person learning when the boards and the districts make the decision it's best for their particular districts. So we're happy about that. We want to keep it that way. We don't want to backslide. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And with that, I just want to update the board that we are in fact moving forward with our plans to welcome students back to in-person learning on our secondary campuses beginning this Thursday with Group A, and of course Friday with Group B. And I would be remiss if we did not also acknowledge our Group C students, who we will continue to serve through remote learning through the duration of this year and this pandemic. I want to really appreciate our school site staff as well as our students and families for participating in orientation activities that have been taking place this week. And it's just great to roll out that red carpet and warmly welcome everyone back. And families continue to help us by doing their part to fill out and submit the daily health screener known as iPass. With that, I turn it back.
All right, thank you. We have 2,100 employees in the district, and we are happy to say, as Ms. Capps noted earlier, that 73% are vaccinated or have a vaccine appointment scheduled. Another 16% are waiting availability of that vaccine appointment, and 11% of our employees have opted not to participate in the vaccination program. So we are so thankful to our many partners across the community who've helped us make this happen in such a short period of time, 2 weeks. This has been accomplished. And thank you to Ms. Capps for just staying on top of where vaccine appointments were available, texting us, making that available so we could get the information out to our employees. And also thank you to Ms. Ford again for participating as a volunteer at Cottage, and all of you for your support in this vaccination effort. Next slide. So we continue to test. Our employees are tested every 2 weeks as part of our surveillance testing program. Testing takes place at each school site, and folks test themselves. So we have had 1,988 staff tests completed since February 22nd with and the testing is doing what it's supposed to do. And that is identifying folks who are positive for COVID. So we've had, out of almost 2,000 tests, we've had 8 positive cases. Those folks then go and complete their quarantine and come back to the school or work site when they're clear of COVID. So the testing is working. And now I'll turn it over to Ms. Maldonado to talk about our plans moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Wagenek and Ms. Carey. So board members, in addition to preparing to open our schools safely, we also in the background have other people who support the cabinet, who I want to thank as well, in preparing for next year, in preparing for the summer, in ensuring that this learning continues. So we are working on summer plans. We are planning a summer school session with the dates between June 14th and July 23rd. More details will be coming soon. We are also planning 2 institutes, a teacher institute and a leader institute, with the weeks of June 7th to 11th and August 2nd to the 6th. We plan to handle topics such as the significant disproportionality plan that we brought to you during this pandemic that talks about the high rate of Latino students who are identified in special education. We'll be rolling out information on our new multi-tiered system of support to address this issue. We'll also be talking to teachers about the capacity, building their capacity, their skills to meet the needs of our emerging multilinguals in reading, math, language development, literacy in the elementary grades. We will provide teachers with choices around their learning so that they can have choices to what fits their needs as learners and leaders. We'll of course be using the new funding that is being slated to come to us from both the state and federal government. And then for the 21-22 school year, our team has also already started to work at looking at our master schedules for next year, looking at what, as board member Capps mentioned, there is going to be lots of new studies, potentially new guidance that we'll look at, whether that means that social distancing remains at 6 or 3 or 4, whatever that's going to look like. We're going to be continuing to look at that, looking at our bell schedules. There's lots of great things that we learned that we could do while in this pandemic, and we could pivot and change and adapt in ways that we didn't think were possible before. So we want to keep some of that learning. We're looking at our bell schedules through some of that lens. And of course, encouraging more enrollment and registration for our 21-22 school year, identifying any of our staffing needs, not forgetting the demands that were made of this board back in June before I arrived around creating a more diverse teaching workforce. So those are some of the things that we still continue to work on as we have been preparing to reopen our schools. And I'm very proud of the executive cabinet, our principals, all the staff members in Santa Barbara Unified who have continued to do the work, even though some might think we haven't been doing it and can't see it because it's all in this virtual environment that we've all been launched into. So that's our report for today. Thank you.
Oh, believe me, we know you've been working really, really hard. We're very grateful, and this is absolutely a very special day and a very special COVID-19 report. Number 17 is lucky for us. With that, I'd like to ask Ms. Trujillo, are there any public comments on this item?
No public comment on this item.
Thank you. Then I would like to ask board members, do you have any further questions or comments? Ms. Alvarez.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you to all the work that goes behind the scenes. We really appreciate all your efforts. And then I do have a question on slide number 11. As we plan for 21-22, the question that comes up very often is, are we going to have 5 days of school? Are we planning for that? And of course, the answer is we want to, but it all depends, right? So the question is today is, are we planning for a 5-day week for 21-22?
So we are planning, as was asked by the board at our last meeting, to increase more in-person school for families that chose to be in person. I want to remind us that we do have about 25% of our families who are still in distance learning. So we will continue to provide those choices to our families. The team has been looking at it. Ms. Carey, Mrs. Coedo have assured me that we could potentially start as soon as sometime in April. But of course, we'll need to prepare our staff, prepare our teachers, ensure that we have all the things in place to do that, with the expectation that it will look different in the fall as we learn more about. I've already gotten the call, by the way, when we're in yellow, can we return fully to in school? So I don't know if Susan Klein is still with me, but those are all the things that are in development and in talks. Susan, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. I would like to just share that right now we've asked CDPH directly, help us know what the guidelines will be for graduation, help us know what the guidelines might be in the fall so schools can plan. They are telling us they're working on it. As you well know, we don't know what will change, but having a plan based on the best of what we know now and being able to be flexible from that is the best guidance we can give. At this point, we do not expect any changes in terms of face coverings, and CDPH indicated they are studying the studies about physical distance and considering changing those guidelines.
Thank you.
Ms. Capps.
Yeah, I had a question that came up to me about the vaccination rates. Again, wonderful progress with 73%, but the 11% who have chosen not to get vaccinated, I know current law would not allow us to require that, but have you heard, or maybe this is a question for Susan Klein Rothschild, any conversations amongst state legislators that could change as well once the vaccine is readily available? Again, voicing concern from some, including myself, that we want our children to be around vaccinated people.
Board Member Capps, I know that there is one of the primary reason why it's not a requirement is because it's under emergency authorization use. And so when you have any medication or vaccine, an emergency authorization use, it is not eligible for mandatory or you taking vaccines. Like some things are mandatory TB tests that we have a good history with, but under emergency authorization, that is not an option, I understand legally. And as we've learned through the last year, things change so much and we have so much to learn. So my hope is that we will continue to learn, and over time that will move from emergency authorization use to full usage.
Thank you. And kind of along the lines with that, and it's wonderful to even think this way, but soon 16-year-olds, 16 and 17-year-olds, our juniors and seniors, could receive the vaccine. My niece, who's 16 in the Bay Area, just received it because she's a home healthcare worker, in addition to her being in high school. So I just wanted to kind of plant that, because I think that we should also be, and maybe you already are, thinking through communications about how we get our juniors and seniors vaccinated as quickly as possible. Now that things are opening up so rapidly, we're now at 2 million a day. Just even 2 weeks ago, we were hoping to get to 1 million a day, I believe. So things are really wrapping up, where you could see ostensibly that potentially even this school year, maybe in June, it opens up to, that age group. So I just want us to be thinking that way. That was more of a statement than a question, but, and then I just, back to my opening comments about this exciting news, new studies that indicate that students could be just potentially 3 feet apart, as opposed to what we're now following, the CDC guidelines of 6 feet apart. Again, under the premise that we want students in person as much as possible, those who choose it, and that it doesn't have an impact on teacher and staff safety if students are actually closer together. That's what I've read. What kind of process is in place or can be in place for if and when the CDC guidelines change? How can we then change our modeling I know it's classroom by classroom, literally, but how have you started those conversations with principals? Walk me through kind of the process there so that my hope is that we wouldn't have a big lag time between that guidance changing and our ability to increase students in the classroom.
So we learned about this yesterday, and we meet with our principals once a week or twice a week as needed. I know that we have a meeting coming up, I think Thursdays, when we were meeting with both groups, and we will begin to have those discussions. I do want to just mark that we also need to wait for CDPH to give us that guidance. We will look at the staffing impacts in secondary. I see it more as a potential issue. But I could be wrong. It could be more of an elementary issue as well. So the staffing matching the size of the room and the number of kids will be having to take into consideration, along with parent choices, accurately stated. But we'll begin those conversations this week or right after spring break.
Okay. I mean, again, I just would hope that they could happen as soon as feasibly possible, so that we can, again, we know what's best for kids, and that's for them to be in the classroom as many days as possible. Maybe that I can just ask Susan Klein-Rothschild if she could convey back to County Public Health that we would love to know if their guidance will follow the CDC's should it change from 6 feet to 3 feet. I guess that's a question for you, Susan, if you had any answers to that at this stage, or you anticipate that, or if not, if I may request of you that you carry that back to County Public Health.
I would be happy to carry that back to the Public Health Department. What we've seen in California is that when something comes from the CDC, it is first evaluated by the California Department of Public Health, and they put new guidance in place. So we follow the school guidance from CDPH. So CDPH sometimes takes CDC, and sometimes it's ahead of CDC. So our guidelines are to follow the state. So we are asking questions of the state constantly, like the question about graduation, like the question about physical space, physical distancing. We've been asking that. So as you challenge us to keep moving and beyond target, we do the same with our California state level folks to help keep things moving. We all want students to be at their best academically, socially, and psychologically. And for most kids, that really is in the classroom.
Thank you for that affirmation. So just to use your word, I'm going to renew my challenge from last week on the Wednesday schedule. Many experts I've been following is the Dean of Public Health of Brown University. He's often on PBS and elsewhere. And he specifically said that a deep cleaning day for schools is a distraction, and that we now know that COVID is airborne. And so I just want to renew my challenge that we can adjust and pivot from that schedule that was set under different understandings of COVID as soon as possible. Because again, I experience this as a mother, and I experience this as a parent voice on this board, that Wednesday, when instruction ends at 11 a.m. for students is just too little, in my opinion. Thank you.
We will definitely work and get back to report to you at next meetings.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your last phrase, but I do think it's important for a report on that and on the progress, and an understanding once again that this board sees this as an urgent need. Thank you. Ms. Munoz.
Yes, just a couple of quick comments. I certainly support my sister board members in terms of the concerns and the continued learning by our students. I want to just, emphasize my appreciation of public health. Susan Klein-Rothschild, you've been here with us every step of the way, and the partnership that we have as a school district with public health. We also, I know meet regularly with the city and the county. So I appreciate that. We're just, changes keep coming along, and we are really kept up to breast on any changes and guidelines. I'm also excited to learn more about the summer school. It'll be here before we know it, and the learning for our students. I am, of course, concerned about the disproportionality and the effect on the more vulnerable students. And appreciate, I know I have everybody's interest and buy-in on that. So I really want to see a focus on that and see how we can do better as a school district. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a couple things from me. First of all, I'm not exactly sure if this is what you were saying, Ms. Alvarez, but I want to weigh in on planning for 5 days of instruction for 2021-22. And I really hope it's always easier to pull back or to change than to, do something completely new and different. So I hope that we can really be thinking about when you see the kind of progress that this county has made in a short amount of time, that I want to believe we can go to orange and to yellow very soon in a matter of months, and therefore resume school. And it does, and to Ms. Capps' point, I do think it really is, it has been shown that we're talking about masking and ventilation as the two most important items, and we can do that and get our kids even to more school, back to school. With that, I just have one question, and it's won't be surprised for people who know me, and that is that I am so happy that sports are back, but could I get some guidance on performing arts?
Be happy to answer that, Ms. Ford. There has been no update on performing arts. The situation remains the same. And I had a lot of questions this week about, okay, now that we're in red, what does that mean for this and for that and for so forth? And if Ms. Klein Rothschild is still on the call, she's welcome to comment, but there are no changes to performing arts now that we've gone into the red. It is the same situation that we've been under. There is singing that's allowed, but it's allowed outside with masks on. Instrumental music can practice, but woodwinds, especially oboes and one other, they can't play at all, but flutes can if they play in a certain way. So all those things are still in place. We know that folks are chomping at the bit to, get back at it. But the guidance from California Department of Public Health in the blueprint for return to K-12 has not changed its guidelines yet.
Let's hope there are changes very soon. I know that all of the schools, especially secondary, are chomping at the bit to have theatrical performances as soon as possible. So thank you so much. We should all keep that in mind. With that, I see no further comments on this issue, so we'll go back to the regular agenda, which is item D, the acceptance of donations. Item D is in particular the acceptance of donations for today, March 16th, 2021. And of course, we're so grateful for those donations from individuals, also from organizations. So board members, may I have a motion to accept the donation?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Capps. And how about a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. And so all board members, all in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. The motion passes unanimously and again with much gratitude. That moves us to the consent agenda. And this is where we approve items that are routine and not likely to require any discussion. So first, Ms. Trujillo, are there any public comments on the consent agenda items?
President Ford, no public comment on this item.
Did you say no?
Correct, no.
Thank you so much. So I do want to clarify for the public that board members have had an opportunity to consider and ask questions about these items before now. But before I call for a motion, board members or Superintendent Maldonado, are there any items on the consent agenda that require more information, comments, or discussion? I see none. So with that in mind, may I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as proposed?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Capps. And how about a second? Thank you, Ms. Munoz. So all in favor of this motion, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. 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 This motion, the consent agenda, passes unanimously. I wrote anonymously. Woo! Unanimously. Thank you. That takes us now on to the action agenda for tonight. And our first action agenda, F1, after confidential discussion that we had in closed session, may I ask for a motion to approve the board action on student discipline according to Ed Code 48918, case 2019-20-35.
I move to approve the recommendation on case number 201920-335.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. So all in favor of this motion, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Ms. Ford, I want to note that I was absent during closed session, so I will not be voting because I was absent when that discussion took place.
Great. So how about all those in favor, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And are there any abstentions? One abstention. That motion passes unanimously. Let's also go on to number 2. This is the positive certification of the second interim financial report for the fiscal year 2020-21. We have received the full report from Ms. Jate and her team a number of days ago, but we have had a good opportunity to review it. So now I'll just turn it over to Ms. Jate and her team for comments and review.
Thank you, Board President Ford, and good evening, board members and Superintendent Maldonado. Tonight, we're asking the board to approve the positive certification of the interim for 2020-21. I'll just talk a little bit about a few things on the summary, and then we'll go right into the slides. We're excited that we've had the elementary school back, but now even excited that we were in red and we are going to move forward with the secondary. We feel we have provided necessary items to keep the students safe and the possibility by providing all as possible and providing all the necessary PPE, which was some of them were listed in the executive summary. I want to point out just a few items on this regarding the budget for 2021, second interim. And our deficit spending improved by $800,000. As you know, when we get into second interim and closer to the end of the year, we know what funds are not being expended. So we do relieve the budget of those expenditures. And so it improved the deficit by $800,000. In our multi-year, we're still projecting a 4% increase. Our average over the past 4 or 5 years has been 5%. So it may seem a little low, but conservatives, as you all know, that we are in fiscal. The step and column advance is about a 1.2%. Food service contribution has remained the same at 0.9%. And we also have the child development contribution still at $292,000. Our local property taxes the estimate will not be available until April, but once we receive that, we'll up that for the estimated actuals, which goes along with our adopted budget. For the, we'll mention more on that, something else on the slide. Sorry, I lost my thought there. I want to talk a little bit about our house market. I went on to the Santa Barbara Realtor.com and found that our medium house sold house is about 1.6 million. However, the actual sale price is 1.8 million, which means that homes are going up higher than what the median home is. That is really good news for our district since we are now community funded, or the old basic aid way we used to call them. This is really good news for us, and the property taxes, the AV growth is the most important part of our budget right now. We don't rely on this as much as we rely on the local property taxes. As far as the state economy's going, it's very, they're still strong, even though we are going through COVID. I was surprised to see that we're up 9.9% in the state revenue. This is good for our state economy. So with that, we'll turn it over to the slides and talk a little bit more about the additional money that we will be getting and where we have spent our money from the past CARES Act. Next slide, please. So this is what we're expected in the new state funding. You can see that $38 million that we will be getting, it's estimated that we will get over the next year. The first initial amount is supposed to come somewhere in May and then again in August. Some of the funds we need to expend by August of 2022 and 2023. So we do have plenty of time to do a lot of learning loss for our students, which is really good. And it shows that the state and the federal government know that there was loss or more students need to have more help in school during this time. Next slide. This is where the first round of funding was spent. We got about 10.9 million, and we still have about 2 million in expenditure that we're going to plan to spend. The most of it is in the learning loss mitigation here, which we have designated for special ed, and they have plans for those funds, and probably will be using them quite soon. Next slide. This is our enrollment data. And as you have noticed that we've been showing you for years now that we are steadily declining, as is the state of California. We declined more during COVID than we anticipated. And what we have done is for the out years, we have brought our enrollment back up to what we think was going to happen if COVID never happened during the adopted budget. So we're not starting out with our low enrollment this year and then reducing it again. We're looking at the enrollment that we projected prior to COVID and because we feel our students will come back, the ones who did leave us for other reasons, such as private school or whatever the case may be. Next slide. This is, you're familiar with this slide, and the blue line shows what our entitlement is. And basically it's a dollar amount per our enrollment, each student. And you can see the blue line is way below the purple bars. And that is our unrestricted property taxes, which is, as you can see, it exceeds what the state would give us if we were LCFF. And this is to let you visually see that we are basic aid. We will remain in basic aid unless something happens on the state level where they start to give us $11,000 or $12,000 per kid. So I don't see that happening in the near future. So I believe Santa Barbara Unified will stay in basic or in community funded district for quite some time. Next slide. So the red bars are expenditures and the green bars are our revenue. And as you can see, in some years, including 2021, our red bars exceed our green bars. So not only are we getting more than we're entitled to, however, our expenditures are in excess of what we're receiving in unrestricted revenues. And you can see that in 21-22, we're expected to be pretty much break even. And then in 22-23, we're anticipating a slight increase over our expenditures. Next slide. Lacey, do you want to take it from here?
I can, sure. So this slide shows how the deficits and the surplus discussed on the previous slide affect the reserve funds. Over the years, the district has done a great job increasing revenues, which is what you're seeing on this slide. In the prior years, the special reserve fund has increased with transfers from the general fund, but going forward, the special reserve fund is projected to grow based on interest earnings only. The restricted fund balance, which you see as purple on the screen, decreases as those funds are generally spent in the year received. Next slide, please. So looking at time, I want to make sure that we have enough for questions and comments. So I'm going to have us jump to the changes to budget and the multi-year projections, which can be found on page 17 of the narrative or the last tab in the linked spreadsheet. Here you see the dollar amount for the projected increases in property taxes, as well as the removal of the revenue and expenditures of the one-time funds. So we removed the revenue and expenditures of the one-time funds as those are spent. So that's basically removing the CARES funding revenue and expenditures as we use those funds. We have also projected increases to salary and benefits, plus the 3 additional elementary assistant principals. And as of right now, our multi-year projections do not include any negotiated salary increases. As those increases are approved by the board, then we will incorporate them into the budget and the multi-year projections. So that pretty much highlights the changes to the multi-year projections. So we can move to the final slide for questions and comments.
One thing I want to add there is that none of the round 2 of the CARES funds or the ESSER funds or any funds from the state or the federal government are in this budget, but will be very soon. We're making the budgets, we're meeting with people to discuss the plan, so we have an idea of where to place the budget items to best serve the departments that are and the sites that are going to be using these funds.
Thank you so much. That's a very comprehensive report, and I think we could be moving positively for positive certification. But first of all, Ms. Trujillo, are there any public comments on this item?
No public comment on this item.
Thank you so much. Board members, are there any questions or comments? Ms. Alvarez, please.
Thank you, Ms. Jateb, for answering all my questions. I do have some comments or questions. Can you go back to the slide of the new monies, the 38 million, please? Okay. So this is a projected revenue that we will be receiving either sometime this year or sometime next fiscal year. We have not received all of that money, is that correct?
That's correct. We have received 0 money.
Okay, and the in-person instruction grant. I believe that part of that grant, we have to allocate specifically for paraprofessionals. I believe it's about 10%. And then the ARPA money, the new money, the ESSER 3, I believe we have to allocate about 20% for learning loss mitigation.
That's
right. Yes. So, which brings me to my next point, that I know that this has been very difficult times for a lot of our families, and it's very difficult for them to purchase even school supplies. So I would like to see some of this money allocated specifically to purchase supplies for students like notebooks, binders, even backpacks that we make available to the sites to help them in this difficult situation. I would very much like to see that. In addition to that, I mean, a 1% increase in property tax is about a 1.4 million. So let's put this in perspective. if we potentially can receive 38 million, that's very healthy for us to look into summer learning, to look into additional tutoring programs, some support for our students, and perhaps even for additional teachers, at least for a one-year assignment, right, to help what we lost this past year. So I like to really keep an eye on this 38 million, and that reports are brought back to the board of how we are spending this money, being that it's one time to support the learning of our students, to support our teachers. Thank you.
Well said, thank you. Ms. Capps, any comments, please?
Yeah, just to pick up on that, I think that I really appreciate Ms. Alvarez. That's really important because, again, you read so many headlines about the funding that's coming down the pike given COVID, and this is helpful to see a number of 38 million, but how that's being spent, I think that it would be wonderful to communicate it, and also, you know, to make it as accessible as possible, and also just to assure that we're getting what we're due. I don't know if there's opportunities. You know, I know you're very dogged about pursuing grants and things like that, but again, I just want to make sure we're being as assertive as possible in the pursuit of these new funds for the dire needs that we currently have in our schools. So I'm sure you are. And I should preface this by saying, Mr. Tay, congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for all of the work. And I do. When I hear you, I know how involved you are with state funding sources and your sources, and the longevity of your expertise here, and how that has benefited our district for so long. So thank you.
Thank you.
I had one kind of specific, that was more of a general guidance, but a specific question. I just noticed when you referenced the 3 assistant principals, maybe I'm misinformed, but I thought we had 2 assistant principals in the elementary level. Is that a new position?
I'll take that question.
Thank you.
Yes, we have looked at some of the services that are needed in our elementary schools. Two assistant principals for 9 elementary schools poses a challenge. We know that most of our secondary schools have more than 1 assistant principal. Adding 3 more positions would bring us to at least half time for each school, and that'll bring us up to 5 total assistant principals in elementary. We hope that those positions will be able to be used to meet the needs of the variety of learners, including our emergent multilingual students who sort of toggle in the place of specialized needs, but not exactly special education. So we're hoping to use those additional positions to support our current principals.
Well, certainly I've seen the benefit of the assistant principals on campuses, but is just procedurally, have the board approved those new positions yet?
No, we have not brought that forward to approval. That's just something that we're budgeting for, that we want to bring forward later on.
Excellent. And I'm also curious too about the sustainability position that was funded in 2019. Does that appear anywhere on the books here? Because it was funded by the then board, or I guess then board.
The sustainability position has never been put into the budget. It went through some iteration a couple years, about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. It became a committee, and then we were looking to hire a teacher to be on the sustainability committee, and that just kind of went away, or lack of push once COVID hit. So we could certainly go back into looking at that position again. And we know we wanted to be a teacher.
Thank you. I know it's a big topic. I won't address it now in the interest of time, but I'll revisit it with Superintendent Maldonado. Just wanted to double check there. Thank you.
Ms. Capps, will you at the end of this meeting suggest that as a future agenda item? Please.
I could. I'm not sure if we're quite there yet, but certainly, yeah, a future agenda item.
Well, I would say like in May or June, we should start to think about this again.
Well, I certainly will welcome the support for a sustainability position from the president of the board, so absolutely I will.
Thank you. Ms. Munoz. Okay. I'll see if Ms. Munoz has questions or comments.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Alvarez.
We can't hear.
Would you bring back the slide where it shows our allocation from the state if we were LCFF funded versus being community funded? Yes. So for the projections for 21, 22, 22, 23, for next year's budget, we all know that Governor Newsom is proposing a 3.84 COLA. Did you already factor that in the blue line?
Yes.
So even though the state-funded schools, their location is going up, you're still projecting that we will be pretty much in community funded for the next few years.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you almost at every board meeting from now until you leave.
Wow, that took me by surprise. What keeps me up at night? I would just say keeping the district solvent is, one of my biggest things, and which is what a CBO is supposed to do and should be keeping them up. 38 million is a lot of money. And, having a plan to spend that 38 million is really important. And I know that our team is on that and getting, and working towards that. We can do a lot of good with that money. And I know that our team will do a lot of good with that money. But thanks for asking, and thank you for your kind words in the beginning of this meeting.
Thank you for your work. So I think there are no other questions. I think it's time for a motion. I'd love to entertain a motion to approve the positive certification of the second interim financial report for 2020-21.
And I'm very happy to make that motion. And thank you, Ms. Jetet. Thank you to your team. I know this is a lot of work and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Cap seconds. So that board members, will you please, all in favor of this motion, signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. This motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
And thank you again. On to item number 3, which is the approval of the new job description for Chief Information Officer. For this, I will turn the item over to Dr. Becchio.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board members, Board President Ford. I bring this item before you as we approach the impending resignation of Todd Rickman, which will occur on June 30th of this year. This job description is really in preparation for that. Just a couple comments. I think Brian Rouse will put up on the screen the job description. So you'll notice it does take the place of the Chief Education Technology Officer. It's job description for the Chief Information Officer. There's a slight change in terms of our vision for the department. It will be a focus on information strategy around data analysis, data analytics, information technology, and the pieces underneath that will be the data systems, the education technology platforms, the technology support department, and the device management and things like that. So that's why you see the slight change in the job title. What I have up here before you is the job description. I'll just mention that there is a slight change to, instead of governing, we put the word leading there. And then I think there's a couple other edit marks, but other than that, it's the same as what was posted on Friday. This is a position that is already in the budget, so it is not increasing the budget at all. And I'll just point out, just out of excitement, because I've been doing a lot of work on it, but if you scroll up you can see the new format of our, scroll up a little bit. Oh, we're missing it here. You'll notice under essential functions, which is an important part of a job description, we have some theme areas under that represent the board's vision for the work that we do. This is more than just putting this on paper, but I from my perspective, a job description communicates our values as an organization, and it communicates our expectations of what we want our employees to carry out, the job that we want them to carry out. So this is really important stuff. All our job descriptions will reflect these 4 categories. If you scroll down, you'll see the bottom one, which is culture and climate. And so our statements are going to be wrapped around those themes. And this was the first glimpse that you as a board have seen in our response to the equity resolution that you passed on January 26th. With that, I think I'll open it up for questions.
Since it's an agenda item, I need to check as to whether we have any public comments with Ms. Trujillo first.
No public comment.
Thank you so much. Then let's go forward with any questions or comments from board members. Seeing none, I will only just underscore that I'm so glad you pointed out the way that the job description is organized, and I love the 4 categories, and I look forward to always talking about new positions and also about job performance with regard to these 4. So thank you so much for making this a reality. With that, if there are no further comments or questions, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the job description for Chief Information Officer. Ms. Munoz, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Capps, and so all in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. This motion, this position also passes unanimously.
Thank you.
We're on number 4 of 8 action items. So for action item number 4, we did have an opportunity to review this new job description also, but will you summarize your request, please, Dr. Becchio?
Absolutely. So over the last month or 2, we have done a collaborative analysis between HR and Ed Services, in particular Special Ed Division. And what we were specifically looking at was the impact that our hiring of contracted services around our hard to fill positions. Examples of that are Maxim, for example, in special ed. The cost of that to the district and whether or not we can, in collaboration with special ed, do that work ourselves. And so, and what kind of cost that would incur and what kind of savings we might gain from that. So this job description I'm excited to bring forward to you because it's our analysis. Our end analysis is that if we hire a position in HR that's an HR specialist dedicated solely to the hiring of hard to fill special education positions, that we can do the recruitment, hiring, and retention that we need to in the hard to fill positions of special ed without having to outsource the selection process. And so this is what we're bringing forward to you tonight, the HR specialist. We also believe that we've done the analysis on the budget. It looks like there'll be a savings to the district, even with the hiring of probably a part-time assistant position to help this HR specialist in the recruitment efforts. And the district will still incur a savings compared to what we're spending currently to outsource the work. With that, I'll happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any public comments, Ms. Trujillo?
No public comment.
Thanks. Before I open up to other board members, Dr. Becchio, I just wanted to say that this particular job description doesn't include the 4 new area functions. So just a reminder that I think it would be not that I want to put a stop to this approval, but just maybe interesting to reorganize them so that they do reflect the 4 functions. Is that something you could do?
Sure. Let me respond to that. So this is, we're starting with all of our management job descriptions because as you can imagine, there's hundreds of job descriptions that we have. in all the different classifications. And so what we're doing is starting with our management descriptions. In fact, tomorrow we have a workshop with management around this very topic. And then we'll move through our organization and that'll reflect. It'll take some time to do that across all job descriptions.
I appreciate that, but I think honestly, with a new position that is so important, we have data about our special education program and our hiring and our personnel and our curriculum that is so important that I would ask you to work on this one also. Would that be reasonable, Ms. Maldonado?
Yes, we can work on revamping the description on this one to add to the functions that we've laid out in the previous job description.
Thank you so much. Board members, are there any additional comments and questions? Ms. Capps, please.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, Dr. Becchio, and this is welcome news, that I know this means this would allow us to be able to not use that contractor that's problematic. Is that a commitment to not use that contractor?
Yes, and what we're going to do is phase that out because we have some employees in those positions currently.
Sure.
And so we'll phase that out over time. But yes, eventually that'll all be housed in HR with the collaboration with special education to hire those positions.
Well, I applaud that. Thank you. And I want to thank the members of the public who have made us, at least the board, more aware of the problems with that contract. So thank you very much, and I'm proud to support this.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy where we'll end our relationship with Maxim as well. And what is the timeline to fill this vacancy?
We're going to post it tomorrow, pending approval tonight. So we will post the position very soon and get it hired and get someone into the position and begin for the 21-22 school year hiring.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Munoz, please.
Yes, no, thank you for the information. I'm, serve on the committee for our students as special ed, so I'm looking forward to, an improvement, improved focus on that. So thank you for your work on this. And I'm sure see Dr. Wagenek here, who's there with me on the same page. Thank you.
Thanks. And I just want to echo the feelings of the board members. I know and I really appreciate, as Ms. Capps said, that we had lots of the facts and the figures, the data about our situation brought to our attention by the public. And it really made a difference for us to learn how it was being perceived and how it wasn't working to have it be 100% an outside contractor. So I want to first express my gratitude also to our public who is looking and thinking and really caring about these students and what's best for them. I also think this is a reflection of Ms. Maldonado's leadership, because she talked to me early on about the need to be in charge of those people who are so key to our future success, which is special educators. And so thank you, Dr. Wagenek, too, for your work in supporting this. That's it from comments for me. So with that in mind, it is now time also to ask for a motion to approve the new job description for human resource specialist in special education. Ms. Munoz, thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Capps. So all in favor of this job description approval, please signify by raising hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, this motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
On to number 5, which is the approval of a resolution 2020-21-27, the amended Conflict of Interest Code and Appendix pursuant to Government Code Section 87306. And that's Dr. Becchio also.
All right, so I think we do have Ann Peak here tonight with us. She worked very hard on this with Carol Tate in my office. And so I'll present to you that this, we are an agency that does have an adopted conflict of interest code. What that means is that we have positions in our organization that we submit to the county that fall under this code, and they have to submit a Form 700, which really outlines their economic interests. And this is just to ensure that that there's transparency about their income and where they gain their income and any outside entities that they're involved in. And so what happens each year, though, is we have, if you notice in the supporting documentation, most of these are job descriptions that we brought before you, title changes. There's some new positions, some are occupied by the same person, but the title's changed. So this resolution is just to update that before we send it on and have board approval. So if you look at the documentation, you can see some of the positions will be recognizable to you. We want to get this accurate, send it off, and we'll be up to date on our conflict of interest code.
Thank you. Ms. Trujillo, are there any public comments on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or comments? Ms. Capps?
Yeah, thank you for this. I think it's really, I mean, I know it's kind of, it's wonky, but I think the public should understand how important this is, that people who are working on behalf of taxpayers aren't also somehow gaining income with entities that might have business before this district. So I just wanted you to elaborate a bit on how many people would this now apply that would have to fill out the Form 700 roughly. I don't need a specific number, but I just want to understand sort of how deep we're going, because again, it's something I'm aware of in other entities in our local government, county and elsewhere, city, that employees at very senior levels don't have to fill out Form 700.
I want to take maybe, I don't know if Ann Peak is with us. I'm not sure if she has the exact number. I would, you do not, Ann, have the exact. I would guess it's around 60 or so. It's many of our management positions.
So all of you fill out a Form
Absolutely,
700?
Yes. And it's not just income, but it's also, we are not to receive gifts from anyone either. So that's another aspect to the.
And would you say of the 60, this updating of our policy has expanded that, say, roughly 10, 20%? Or
No, because if you notice, I'll pick a couple. Budget manager, that was somebody in a different position, and we changed the job title. And so it's the same person that has to do it, or either it might have been added, but most likely it was, she was already under that code under a different title. So I don't think it's increased it by 10 or 20% necessarily. It might be someone that, like for example, the Chief Education Technology Officer, now we're bringing on a Chief Information Officer.
Sure.
It was, so that one would be added to it, but one's taken off, so.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, I just want to use this opportunity to state for anyone who might be paying attention that all of these roughly 60 employees, these forms are public information to make sure that our schools are being run in a way that's as ethical as possible. So I'm glad that this is coming before us right now. No further questions.
Any other questions? Ms. Alvarez or Ms. Munoz? No? So may I now ask for a motion to approve Resolution 2020-21-27, the amended Code of Interest, Conflict of Interest Code, and appendix pursuant to Government Code Section 87306. Ms. Alvarez, thank you. And a second?
Second.
Second. Ms. Capps, thank you. All in favor of this motion, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. This motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And on to number 6, which is action item number 6, the completed contract of the Santa Barbara High School Peabody Grandstand Replacement, Stadium Renovation, and Site Utilities Upgrades Project. For this, Mr. Vasilini, please summarize the request for action from the board.
First of all, I'd like to point out the slide deck is for the Adams project, so I think we've got them reversed. Although I'm happy to do them in the opposite order, but they're agendized that way.
Not after I said that long intro.
What we're doing here is we're asking the board to allow us to file the notice of completion now. What that does is that allows us to give the retention money back to the general contractor, which in turn will make sure that our local contractors are getting, our local subcontractors are getting paid. we've been hearing that because of our delays, they have not been getting paid. And since a lot of them are our subcontractors that work on our projects as well, we're interested in getting them paid. I do need to inform you that there is one pending change order. It's worth $530,000. And the way that happened is the general contractor at the end of this project came in with a list of potential change orders worth over $1 million. And they were all change orders that were rejected by the district during the course of the work. However, state law and our contract documents allow for a contract dispute resolution. So we did a meet and confer process. We were not able to come to agreement. So then the next step was to go to mediation, which we did. We had an independent party act as the mediator and met with both folks and their legal teams, spent an entire day working on these negotiations. And what we came out of that with was basically the cost of defense was not necessarily worth it. Both the mediator and our legal teams advised that this $530,000 figure is actually potentially much less than the district would be exposed to if we went to litigation. And so the uncertain outcome of the litigation process led us to believe to this settlement. So we actually reduced it by 50%, which is very important. This change order, we don't have the documentation for, which is why you don't see it tonight. We will have it at the next meeting. So I'm asking that we approve filing the notice of completion and bring back the change order, at the next meeting on consent. I also would like to point out that this extra funding is coming from the contingency fund of the project itself. So we're not losing further bond money or coming out of general fund or any other funding sources to take care of that project. If you want to look at now we're to your spreadsheet that I see on the screen here, it just kind of tracks the funding for the project. So you see up at top is our revenue of our contract price and our 10% contingency, which gave us a little over, $31.5 million for the project. In the expenditures, you can see the contract amount. You can see the prior board approved change orders for $751,000 and change. You see the pending change order that I have been speaking about for $530,000, which gives us a total change order amount for the project of $1,281,281. A couple of points that I'd like to share with the board is that figure for our total change order represents about 55% of our contingency fund for the project. But even more impressive, that number equals 4% for the construction costs. So on a $30 million construction project, we had only 4% change orders. So the good news is, if you look at the bottom line, we have nearly $1.6 million left in that contingency fund, and we're going to be able to reallocate that back to program contingency in Measure I, so we can use it on other projects. Now is when I was going to show you some wonderful photos of the new stadium, which I'll share with the board at some other time. So we'll get to the approvals, which for tonight is asking the board to approve the filing of the notice of completion now, and also approving bringing back the pending change order at the April 6th meeting for the approval on the consent agenda. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. First of all, Ms. Trujillo, are there any public comments on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you so much. Then board members, questions, comments? Ms. Alvarez.
It was really hard to hear, so maybe you did cover this in your presentation. The change order for $530,000, you said we went into mediation and most likely that's going to be half of the 530, or is the 530 the final number?
530 is the final number.
Okay. And that has been completed, so that's why we can file the notice of completion right now?
Yes, that was part of our mediation agreement. So it's a binding document. There were some guidelines about there's a few punch list items that remain. They have 60 days to complete them. We have retained $350,000 from their retention, so we'll hold that back. And they have 60 days to finish those things. And if they don't, we're going to use that money to finish those for them. And so it's a legal binding document they have to follow, as well as paying their subcontractors, which is why we're putting this on the notice of completion now. And I did get guidance from legal counsel to make sure that we were okay to do this in a board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Then, hearing none, may I ask for a motion to accept the completed contract for the Santa Barbara High School Peabody Grandstand Replacement, Stadium Renovation, and Site Utilities Upgrades Project? Ms. Munoz, thank you. And how about a second? Ms. Capps, thank you. So all in favor of this motion, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Vizzolini, I believe that you will be also introducing us to number 7, which is about Adams Elementary School. And I'm wondering if you could speak up and or if our tech guys could. No, I don't know what you mean, Oscar. Okay, so perhaps Mr. Vizzolini, if you could just be closer to your microphone, to your computer, that would be great so we can hear a little better. We've got fans going in here. And let's see if we can do this item before our break. Mr. Vizzolini.
I'm ready. Here we go. So good evening again, board members. The portable replacement project at Adams Elementary School, which we're now calling the new classroom and site improvements project, has gone through a few iterations. I'm happy to report that we are now ready to move into the construction phase. Next slide, please. Here are the buildings that are proposed to be replaced. The building on the left is the old library complex next to Las Positas Road. The buildings on the right are adjacent to the playground and are some of the oldest portables we have in the district. Next slide, please. As a reminder, we combined 2 projects. So we're putting the portable replacement project and the outdoor sink project together in one, so that we have everything happening at one time. As you can see, these sinks are in dire need of replacement. Next slide, please. This is a picture of one of the patios outside of the existing classrooms, and you can see the shape of the pavement there. So these areas are also in much need of repair. Next slide, please. This is a photo of a non-compliant ADA element. There are a few of these, not too many, but we need to correct these in order to meet the requirements of the Division of the State Architect. Next slide, please. Here you see some failed pavement outside of the permanent classrooms and adjacent to 2 of the buildings along the playground that are going to get removed. And this was not included in the pavement renovation of the playground. So this area is another one we would like to take care of. It is of note that the last 3 slides that you saw were not included in the original scope that was developed back in 2015 when the bond was developed. And we would like to include these in this project. Next slide, please. Here we've got some project details. So you can see the 2 new buildings on the campus map there. As a reminder, we got 2 new buildings with 6 classrooms. We will also be having, when we're done with this, we'll have 10 outdoor sinks and countertops that have been removed. 2 will be brand new. 8 will be existing that are going to be replaced. So they will all look like the the sinks that are along the kindergarten area and room 8 through 12 that was done with the library. So all of them will be the same throughout the campus. We'll also end up with 10 outdoor teaching areas or flexible spaces. We're adding 2 with the 2 new buildings, with the 2 new classrooms by the playground. And we're also going to be renovating the 8 spaces that exist to get rid of the paving and add concrete in their place. The last piece here is the extensive site improvements. If you can see on this site map, all of the checkered or grid area, that's all new concrete that will tie together all of those spaces and also get rid of all the pavement in that area so we don't have a maintenance issue moving into the future. So to summarize, we would like to include the renovation of the outdoor patios, the ADA improvements, and the interconnecting walkways with the project. The guaranteed maximum price that we received from RSH Construction was $6,946,210. And that reflects a budget shortfall of $2,288,149. What we're proposing is to use developer fees to make up that difference. So our developer fee budget is currently sitting at $5.6 million. We think this is a good use of those funds, and we are going to be recommending that the board allow us to reallocate $2.288149 for this project. Next slide, please. What we have here is a rendering of the classrooms as they will be done. So you see their proximity to the main campus. You can see all of the interconnecting sidewalks in that grid, kind of the tan color. Also important, as you can see outside of the let's call it the left-hand building, we've created another 2 spaces outside for teaching outside, which we know is important right now. And there's also a privacy wall so that if there's recess going on in the future, they can still use those spaces. Next slide, please. And here's our funding. So we see the original budgets for the 2 projects we combined. You look at the guaranteed maximum price from RSH Construction and you subtract our budget from that, and you see our shortfall in red. Our budget reallocation as proposed would take care of that deficit. And then at the bottom on line 6, what you can see is our remaining project budget, and that is our contingency fund. So we have $463,000 and change for unforeseens during construction at the site. Below that, I'm just as a point of reference, I gave you the developer fee balance as it is now. With our proposed reallocation, our new budget fund balance would be $3,355,552. Next slide, please. So tonight, we're asking the board to approve the resolution approving the guaranteed maximum price of $6,926,410 for RSH Construction. We're asking for approval of reallocation of $2,288,149 from developer fees to cover the budget shortfall. And then we're also asking the board to approve commencement of construction. And with that, I'm done with my presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. A picture tells 1,000 words, or is that how it goes? Yes?
Pretty close.
Great photos, thank you. Ms. Trujillo, are there any public comments on this item?
No public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm wondering if any board members have further questions or comments. Ms. Alvarez.
Mr. Bizzolini, I see that the board approved the contractor, I think it said in April. And the amount that was approved back then was $4.6 million. And now we're being asked to approve an additional $2.2 million, which is a 49% increase of a change order. And I'm wondering do you believe that this is the best route by not going to the traditional public bid process? If RSH gave us this estimate of 2.2 million, do we have anything to compare it with from another contractor? 2.2 million is a lot of money. I see the need, I see that, but I'm wondering about as far as the process itself of doing a lease back and a guaranteed maximum instead of going to a public bid process.
Well, I can answer that in 2 ways. So first of all, because it's a lease-back contractor, we don't have the luxury of doing a competitive bid to see what other contractors might give us that work for. I will say that probably moving forward, we will move away from lease-back, but this was awarded a long time ago. And that's the reason we stuck with it. I think it's also really important to separate the fact that $2.2 million, it takes care of all of the interconnecting sidewalks. It takes care of all of the outdoor patios that weren't included in the original. So this original budget number of 4.6 did not consider replacing the pavement in the outdoor classroom patio areas. It didn't include fixing the drainage in those areas. It did not include the ADA improvements that were identified during the design process. And it did not replace all of the extra paving throughout the upper part of the campus there. So there's a significant amount of concrete there. And that was not included in the original. So that's the difference. I definitely agree that it's a big ask, but I think that if you walk through Adams School back near the library, you can see how it's all flows. And if we don't do this now, we're going to go back in there and try and replace the paving in those patios in the next year or so. And it's going to be an unsuccessful job because the problem is you can't fit heavy equipment in there. There's walls all the way around those patios. So getting rid of this right now, we're going to pay a little bit on the front end, but we're also eliminating years and years of pavement maintenance in that whole upper area.
No, I understand the need. My concern is, and in the future, I like to see us more of a bidding process for these big jobs. And also, I personally don't like change orders. That's just my personal thing. I don't like change orders. I like us to be as inclusive as possible of a project so that we know, okay, we are going to need to replace the asphalt. We are going to need to replace whatever else into that one project. And I do appreciate that you are proposing that we dip into Fund 25 for developer fees to cover this cost. I appreciate you doing that. My thing is that I like for us to see more thorough in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Capps or Munoz, any questions? Please, Ms. Munoz.
I want to make sure that I understand correctly in terms of this action item. And if there are any problems that are encountered by the contractor, is the guaranteed maximum price, is that it? Like that would be the total?
Yeah, there's always potential for something to be found that's undisclosed. And it usually happens at the beginning of a project when you're doing the demolition and you're digging up and you're over excavating. There's always the potential to find something that isn't on any drawing. And that's what that contingency money is for. I do know that, one of the benefits of doing leaseback is that the contractor gets to look at the plans well ahead of time. And so that it's not a surprise to them that we go through all of this stuff with them. I think that I also would like to clarify that this $2 million is not a change order. It's a proposed increase to complete the project. A change order happens after we've awarded the contract.
I really appreciate that clarification and both the board member questions. With that, could you please, Mr. Rouse, put the two requests back up on the screen? Because I would like to ask for a motion for these approvals and ask the board member who makes the motion to read these aloud. Is there a motion? Ms. Munoz, go for it. Yes.
I make a motion to approval of guaranteed maximum price of, oh my goodness, $6,926,410 from RSH Construction and commencement of construction, and also the approval of reallocation of $2,288,149 from developer fee funds to cover the project budget shortfall.
Great, thank you. Is there a second? Ms. Capps, thank you. All in favor of this motion, this multi-tiered motion, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. And with that, it is 8:37 and we will take a 10-minute break to 8:47. Thank you. We will continue our meeting now, thank you, and we will go on to our last action item of the evening, action item number 8. For this one, I would like to ask Superintendent Maldonado to summarize the request for action from the board.
Thank you once again. This is a contract to approve the search to hire School Services of California to conduct an executive search for the recruitment of a new chief business officer to replace the hard-to-replace Mr. Tay, who deserves all the recognition for all her hard work. We wanted to be sure that we brought to you this contract, but I do want to let the board members and the public know that I looked into 3 different companies to do this work and found that School Services is known for developing business officers and really would have the best expertise in trying to find us a top leader like Mr. Tate to be replaced in that position. I also have ready for the board, if you have any questions, Ms. Danielle Connolly, available for any questions from the board on this proposed contract.
Thank you. I wonder if you could elaborate just a little bit about the process you went through in considering the 3 different groups.
Yes, so we looked at the timeline for selection of a new chief business officer, given that we want someone that can start as early as July 1st. So the availability of the company was important to us. We also wanted to be sure that it was somebody that would know what are the steps we would take to create the right profile for our district and for the kind of candidate that would match our district and have the expertise available to do that. And of course, we looked at pricing, which matters. And of course, as with any contract, pricing can vary depending on the types of services that are offered. And again, all 3 companies were great. The deciding factor for me was more around the expertise around the business services side of the job.
I have to agree. So I'll first of all ask if there are any public comments of Ms. Trujillo.
No public comment.
Thank you. Then I will just add that I also agree that School Services of California, this is their expertise, and they will be able to find us a replacement, even though Ms. Chate is irreplaceable. So with that, are there any other comments or questions from board members? Ms. Alvarez.
First of all, thank you, Ms. Maldonado, for doing all this work and being so thorough. And thank you to Meg Jate for all her work. And this is an extremely, extremely important position to fill. And I'm happy that School Services put in a proposal, being that this is their forte, their expertise. I'm looking at the timeline, and I like that the final interview scheduled for May 17th, so that hopefully there'll be some time between Ms. Jate and the new person that is selected. So I like to ask Ms. Connolly, if you can just give us a little bit of a brief summary of your process, and do you think this timeline is realistic for us to meet?
Sure. Good evening, Board Member Alvarez. It's my pleasure to do that and to be here tonight. Actually, we exercise some flexibility in consideration of the timeline, and in working with Superintendent Maldonado and understanding the desire to have someone start by July 1st, we used that May 25th board meeting and worked backwards from there. Typically, our process is 6 to 8 weeks in terms of the posting time. We won't post for less than 6 weeks because it takes that time to gather the interest with targeted recruiting and then also accumulate a suitable candidate pool. So a long story short, to answer your question, yes, this is enough time to conduct an effective recruitment. We do have some compressed timelines in terms of the first and second interviews. We'll be turning those around rather quickly, as you notice where that is. And that's also around the time of the May revision. So it's a very busy time and active time in May. But we do feel that we can do that with fidelity. We'll just work very closely with Superintendent Maldonado and her staff in terms of getting all the information that we need and very efficiently pushing that out there in terms of advertising and announcing the vacancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Capps or Ms. Munoz, any questions or comments? Great. I just have one question. I also would like to know, what do you see are the roadblocks or additional challenges you'll be facing because of the pandemic?
Well, in terms of challenges, the challenges right now are there are a lot of active chief business official recruitments going on. This is the busiest time that we've experienced at school services. Last year, for example, we had 14 total recruitments, and we've already surpassed that since January now. So there's a lot of movement in terms of recruitments. The pandemic has not really slowed down the hiring, as you would think. Very quickly last March, we used to do, in-person interviews, as everyone did, and we quickly modified our process to a virtual interview process where we monitor panels, we facilitate interviews, and we've done first and second interview processes and had chief business officials confirmed virtually at board meetings for employment. So believe it or not, we've been able to pivot and modify the process, and we've been quite effective in terms of making those placements.
Terrific. I'm excited about the process. So now may I ask for a motion to approve the contract with School Services of California, executive search firm for the recruitment of the new chief business officer?
I so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. And is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Munoz. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, board members.
You're welcome. And that takes us back to the report and discussion agenda. And that takes us actually to item number two. And so for that, I'd like to ask Dr. Wagnick to summarize the first reading and discussion of 2 board policies in the 5,000 series, please.
Good evening again, President Ford, Board, and Superintendent Maldonado. I am actually pulling back Board Policy 5131 for further analysis and alignment with our current practices before bringing that to the board with review. So I will be only focusing tonight on Board Policy 5132. A little bit of background on BP 5132. Several years ago, we updated our exhibit that details dress code and grooming. That update to the exhibit was done in conjunction with site administrators as well as student input. And this board policy update actually takes that a little bit farther, and I'm actually it seems like a small policy, but it has some really important protections in place for our students while still maintaining safety. So this policy really is about freedom of expression and students' right to have that freedom of expression while at the same time maintaining the safety of our students. So it also emphasizes that dress and grooming should not be a matter of conformity, but rather that freedom of expression. And it details the rights and responsibilities that students have. It also calls out specifically the way in which adults should respond to students who are in violation of the dress code because of safety issues, and that should be done in a way that preserves students' respect and dignity. And then finally, I want to point to the fact that it does specifically mention gang attire. This is a subject that I have always been concerned about. I know that there are many times in our own district, going back throughout my career, where dress code was enforced in the name of gang attire, when really it was not gang attire, it was merely student fashion choices that teenagers make. And so, and also I want to state very clearly, we have very, very few students in our district who are actually gang affiliated or actively involved in street gangs. And so that having been said, we do believe that it is important that gang attire not be worn in the school because for safety reasons. So we have to be certain that we understand what is the difference between teen fashion choice and gang attire, and I believe that this policy allows us to do that. So at this point, I will turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hio, are there any public comments on this report?
No public comment on this item.
Thank you. Board members, questions about this initial report on BP 5132 on dress and grooming? Please, Mrs. Munoz.
Just a comment that I appreciate, Dr. Wageneck addressing the approach to the dress code and the sensitivity which you're presenting it, and the stress on like the teen fashion code, fashion choice in terms of dress, and being sensitive to the diversity of our student body. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much for the explanation. I wonder also, Dr. Wageneck, if you wouldn't mind just a little bit of a summary as to what you want to be thinking about with regard to the smartphone policy?
We are currently working, we have a work group that's working to bring the board a total revision of our response to student behavior or discipline guidelines. And so I really would like to bring that board policy at the same time that we bring those guidelines and have it be part of a package.
Sounds great. Do you have a sort of a time frame for that?
We have 2 more meetings, and so we're planning to bring that in May so that we can implement beginning in the new school year.
21-22. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, let's move on to the final report for tonight. Very exciting update on the META plan implementation. And for that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Larios Horton, please.
Good evening, President Ford, board members, and Superintendent Maldonado. I will wait for Mr. Rouse to start the presentation. Thank you so much, Mr. Rouse. And so today I bring you an update regarding the progress of our language instructional programs under the newest guidance outlined in our META plan. Right. I'm just waiting for our presentation to go into present mode. Thank you so much. Thank you. In particular, today's report will include an overview of the program of instruction for emergent multilingual learners. Okay, so we'll just advance. Very good. All right, we are on slide 2, Mr. Rouse. Thank you. So in particular, today's report will include an overview of the program of instruction for our emergent multilingual learners, the progress and plans we've made as a district in pandemic conditions to advance our structured English immersion programs and our dual language immersion programs. This report will conclude with events and celebrations scheduled for this coming month. Next slide, Mr. Rouse, thank you. To begin, it's very important that we ground our report in numbers. of the nearly 13,000 students in our district this year, almost 2,000 are emergent multilingual learners. That is 15.3%. What is important to note is that when looking at the breakdown of the students by grade span, over 2/3 of our students are enrolled in our elementary schools. This becomes important when we talk about our elementary program of instruction. Next slide, please, Mr. Rouse. Thank you. By now, many are now familiar with the term emergent multilingual learner, which has replaced the label of English learner in our district. As one of the first districts in California to officially adopt an assets-oriented label for English learner students, this board signals to all that when we see our students, we see them for the language skills and attributes they already possess and take responsibility for implementing an educational program that reinforces this idea. Next slide, please. So how do we best serve our emergent multilingual learners? Our almost 2,000 emergent multilingual learners, 2/3 of whom are in our elementary schools? Well, we know that first and foremost, any program we implement must be done so through strong and collaborative leadership, a prepared and diverse workforce, research-informed teacher professional learning, effective standards-aligned instructional materials, and most importantly, through culturally responsive family partnerships, making sure our families are partners in supporting our students. Next slide, please. On this chart, you will see the continuum of emergent multilingual learner program effectiveness. First, let's talk about the required program of instruction, and then we'll talk about the gold standard program for emergent multilingual learners and where we are with each of these. What many know already is that the sink or swim model of instruction is actually not legal in the United States. Legislation and state and federal checks and balances ensure that students receive at minimum a structured English immersion program. Even then, districts struggle to meet legal requirements, and our district has definitely gotten away with not doing so for a long time. In the structured English immersion program, students not in dual language immersion are provided with support in their first language in order to better understand what is being taught. Students must also receive designated English language development. This is important because our students need to learn about English from their teachers at their specific language proficiency level. In addition, it is important that students learn language all day long in all of the content areas. Integrated ELD is where teachers intentionally reveal and teach the language of the subject matter to students, so students are not learning new content, not only learning new content, but also how to read, write, and speak the language of the discipline in English. Yet, unequivocally and without reservation, we can say that dual language immersion is the gold standard for all students, but especially for emergent multilingual students. Students learning side by side in a target language like Spanish while also learning English is the premium program. The data points to this, especially as students matriculate up through the grades. It's sort of like a go slow to go fast model that recognizes that students who are learning new content in a target language carry a double linguistic and cognitive load, yet the payoff is tremendous. It is common knowledge, but worth reiterating the benefits of being multilingual. Opportunity. In the world job market, language skills are in high demand. Cognitive skills, memory, a deterrent for Alzheimer's, multitasking and problem solving. higher academic achievement for our students, greater cultural competence, which builds empathy, and most importantly, especially for our emergent multilingual learners, is the ability to remain connected to our own families. Because to lose that is to lose out on the most important aspect of what supports our students' well-being. Dual language immersion programs are programs of choice, programs we must offer to students as a result of Proposition 58, which California voters overwhelmingly approved in 2016. I reiterate that no student is required to participate in a DLI program, but we cannot deny it is the program that will prepare our students best. Next slide, please. Now for an update related to the structured English immersion program in our district, the program which the majority of our students are receiving and the progress we have made this year. With regard to designated English language development, the board may recall the adoption of new curriculum this past fall, implementation and teacher support provided by our amazing ELD instructional support specialists and partners from WestEd and UC Berkeley's Lawrence Hall of Science have helped to make this happen. No easy feat for them or our teachers to deliver on a new curriculum over distance learning. We also continue to expect that teachers administer the state-required LPAC assessment, with the addition this year that our TK2 teachers administer this assessment one-on-one to each of our emergent multilingual learner students. With regard to integrated ELD, we have begun more intentional work with teachers on how to integrate language development in our classrooms. This, of course, is so important because without that language instruction, our students risk not learning. Structured English immersion program of instruction has not been where it needed to be. We recognize that. In fact, we have seen the impact of this through the recent designation by the California Department of Education that our district's Latino students are 3 times more likely to be identified for special education. A great majority of those students identified when they were emergent multilingual learners. We are going to change this and have made some great strides this year. Toward that end, we will continue to do so and are preparing for accelerated learning for our educators this summer, and included in that learning is new ELD assessment for our students, which will help our teachers better understand the language needs of our students as our teachers plan for instruction. And finally, it is quite important that we remember that students need to receive primary language support, much of which can come through additional learning for our teachers. Next slide, Mr. Rouse, please. I'm sorry, previous slide. Thank you. All of this, of course, must be accomplished with the important guidance of our Meta through lines, which speak to approaching all learning through the idea that our students' identities are seen and included in our curriculum design. Finally, grounded also in the guided language acquisition design, also known as GLAD, a 5-day institute which was completed by all of our teachers. All right, next slide, please. Now to the gold standard and our progress towards it. This year, we are so proud of the work done at Santa Barbara Junior High School, launching a new program in pandemic. Once again, not easy, but our Condor team was up for the task. In the meantime, McKinley and Santa Barbara High School are in planning years, and we have some great news and updates to share. I wish to remind the board and the public that a 10-page report accompanies this presentation, where more detailed information is shared about our dual language immersion programs. So I will not be going into all the details in that report and will focus on high-level updates. In addition, I will also let the board know that the principals of our schools are available at the end of this presentation in case you have specific questions for them. Next slide, please. As we look to next year, we are happy to report that we are on track with starting our kindergarten program at McKinley Elementary School, a program approved by our school board last year after reviewing a detailed feasibility study. Full conversion to grade 6 is expected by 2027. We are also now preparing to receive our second DLI cohort at Santa Barbara Junior High School, and finally starting our planning year for our Santa Barbara High School DLI program. Next slide, please. Now for some key updates about our McKinley Elementary Dual Language Immersion Program. At McKinley, the site leadership team, led by Dr. Garcia Yoshitomi, in collaboration with teachers, have been working to develop a shared vision for the DLI program at McKinley. We appreciate the technical assistance provided to the leadership team by the California Association of Bilingual Educators. We are happy to report that our DLI educators are in place, having hired Ms. Gaxiola, Ms. Esquivel, and Ms. Limon last spring. We know it's important to support our teachers, and McKinley DLI teachers and our Santa Barbara Junior High School DLI teachers meet at least monthly with key district staff to ensure our teachers are feeling supported. The McKinley DLI teachers, the principal, and other teachers at McKinley have been learning together throughout the year and provided with several different opportunities to learn together. The teachers, with the support of our technical assistance provider and our district's instructional coaches, have been reviewing and identifying instructional materials that will best help our students with early literacy development, numeracy, and other content instruction in Spanish. As part of our efforts to reach families, we conducted 5 parent webinars in December and January. While our current enrollment is only at 22 students, we do know that based on enrollment trends of the past years, McKinley area families typically wait to enroll their students until late July, early August. To address that and to increase enrollment, and now that we are in the red tier, we are inviting any families interested in our program to our Super Saturday or Super Sábados on April 3rd and April 17th, where we will be sharing additional information with families in a safe manner, following all safety protocols, to include a campus walk through the beautiful grounds of McKinley Elementary School. Next slide, please. Now with some updates about our Santa Barbara Junior High School program. At Santa Barbara Junior High, students enrolled in DLI are able to take either 2 or 3 Spanish language content courses. Enrollment is strong at Santa Barbara Junior High School and currently serves 32 students, with 29 incoming students. DLI leadership team meets monthly at Santa Barbara Junior High School, and they continue to build the program under the new leadership of Principal James Koenig, and in close collaboration with the amazing Maestra Paloma Serrano, who also serves as the program's coordinator. The teachers, Ms. Guerrero, Ms. Serrano, and Mr. Valdez, have participated in a variety of teacher professional learning opportunities this year, beginning since this past summer, and continue to build their capacity to deliver instruction in Spanish. With regard to our families received an orientation to the program at the beginning of this school year, and we will be invited to a student showcase on April 22nd. For incoming interested families, we hosted a webinar in December, which was very well attended and yielded a strong enrollment in the program. I'd like to share with you just a snippet now of a video produced for our DLI program at the Santa Barbara Junior High School. This is about a minute long, and I believe Sandra has it queued up.
Al entrar a la escuela sé que puedo ser yo misma. My friends come from many different places and have experienced many different things. Porque soy parte de la doble inmersión lingüística. Because I'm a DLI student.
I want my child prepared to succeed in our globalized world.
Y eso es lo que hace la doble inmersión lingüística.
Every day we take classes in both English and Spanish. El 50% de nuestro tiempo lo dedicamos a cada idioma.
And every class reflects the same content standards.
The only thing that changes is the language they learn through.
Quiero que mi hija esté completamente preparada en inglés, pero también quiero que conozca de nuestro idioma y de nuestra cultura.
I'm learning to respect everyone and become part of a different culture. Y sé que mis maestros me están preparando para el mundo.
Nuestros estudiantes logran las mismas metas que cualquier otro estudiante.
DLI has 4 goals: bilingualism and biliteracy, social cultural competence, academic achievement, and critical consciousness.
No tengo que perder un idioma para aprender otro. Por eso soy estudiante de doble inmersión lingüística. Which is why I'm a DLI student.
Thank you, Sandra. And those are students from our very own program and parents, along with our coordinator, Ms. Maestra Serrano. All right, next slide, please. Finally, to Santa Barbara High School. This coming year, we will begin to plan for the expansion of DLI into Santa Barbara High School. Some of the courses we are planning to have available to students take into account the educators already at Santa Barbara High School who are already uniquely positioned to deliver subject matter in Spanish. We're also thrilled to begin to plan for our specialized secondary pathway grant, in which our students will get to be a part of the state's first interpreter translator pathway. And as Superintendent Maldonado mentioned in her comments, the opportunity for our multilingual learners to hone a skill that is in very high demand. Next slide, please. So as we look to the future, we stand firm on Proposition 58 and the research that all of our students should be afforded the opportunity to learn in a Gold Star program, not only because the law requires we do so, but because we believe that our students deserve the very best. Not just our emergent multilingual students, but all students, as we look with hope to a more caring and just future for the students and families in our city. To that end, we will be reaching out to our families at each elementary school about these programs, and with that, work with them and our schools to continue to grow our DLI programs. Next slide, please. With the promise of multilingualism, there is celebration. I'd like to make you aware of these very special events we have planned in the coming month, which is also a bilingual and multilingual learner advocacy month. Also coincidentally, my birthday month. How cool is that? So this includes our All ELAC celebration. Some of you board members have attended before. Our McKinley Super Sábados and our Santa Barbara Junior High School DLI Showcase. So please, we'll make sure you have all of the information so that you can join us. Next slide, please. As I close out this report and answer some of your questions, I want to remind us that META was developed with over 90 stakeholders and at the urging of our district's English Learner Advisory Committee, because no student needs to lose a language to learn a language. Thank you.
Terrific presentation. Thank you so much. Ms. Trujillo, are there any public comments on this report?
Thank you, President Ford. We do have 4 speakers on this item. I will name them 4. Alice Post, Janet Jimenez, Roseanne Crawford, and Sheridan Rosenberg. I will start with Alice Post.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Alice Post, and I'm speaking on behalf of Coalition for Neighborhood Schools. I listened to the presentation and I was a little shocked to hear that they have 22 people enrolled in it. But I will deliver my prepared remarks, because it appeared to me that you were going to convert McKinley to a Meta school, and that's what I'm addressing, and that's what I oppose. The district acknowledged is that there will be McKinley families who prefer English language immersion for their children, and I believe we have a speaker here tonight to address that issue. McKinley, but my issue is facilities. McKinley is the only remaining downtown elementary school in the Santa Barbara Elementary District. There once were 4, but the other 3 have been closed or demolished. So there's 2,000 kids that live in those areas and only 1 school to support them. And now you're going to create a program where parents who don't want this program would have to leave the downtown to go somewhere else? 2 questions. Where will they go? And second question, how will they get there? There's no other neighborhood school option for these 2,000 families. Is it fair to convert a neighborhood school without giving them a neighborhood option? This is why Coalition for Neighborhood Schools supports the creation of additional downtown school facilities at 720 Santa Barbara Street, your beautiful administrative offices, which we want to be a school for these 2,000 children. But that's in the future, I admit. As things stand currently, without a new downtown elementary school, a much better facilities choice for a dual language immersion school would be Cleveland. Cleveland neighborhood families who would prefer English language instruction could easily transfer to Franklin, which is within walking distance. And it is worth noting that Franklin's test scores in both English and math for emerging English language Meta students are among the highest in the district, far higher than those of Adelante. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Our next, our next speaker is Janet Jimenez. Ms. Jimenez, can you hear us? Ms. Jimenez, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, hello, board members. My name is Janet Jimenez Mendoza, and I would like to share my personal experience again as to why I am against the Meta program. I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I came here to the United States at the age of 13. I was an ESL student when I arrived here at La Colina Junior High back in 2002, where I was fully immersed in English, and I had a lot of support after school from my English teacher. Her name was Mrs. Robledo, and she would come to my house and she would help me to read and write and learn the language. I had a lot of trouble because I did not knew a word in English when I came from Mexico, and I am so thankful for her life. But then when I graduated at La Colina in that same year, and I was sent to San Marcos High School, everything changed. At La Colina, I was challenged, and they helped me to try my hardest to learn the language. And if it wasn't for that, then I don't know if my English would be to what it is right now. But when I attended to San Marcos High School, all my classes and my textbooks were in Spanish, where unfortunately, instead of challenging me and helping me succeed, it held me back. And it was so sad to see that other classmates that I had were not able to have that same encouragement and the same help that I received from Mrs. Robledo in the after school at home. And also my little brother, he was in second grade back in 2002, and he was fully immersed in the English language at Hollister School, and he received extra help 2 times a week from a UCSB volunteers that would come home and helped him with his English and homework, and the same for my sister in 4th grade back then. They're both now fluent English speakers. My brother, he is working now as an architect up in San Luis Obispo. And I just want to say that our children that speak fluently Spanish at home don't need to be immersed into Spanish, or they don't need to be taking extra classes in Spanish in school. That's why we send them to school. I hear a lot of Hispanic parents, including my own family, that we would say, at home, we speak only Spanish because that's what the language that we know. We will teach them. At home, they speak English, and that's where they will learn the language, because that's something that we cannot teach them at home. And I also want to say that in immersing our Hispanic children into only English classes, it won't affect our culture. As a family, our grandparents, our uncles, aunts, cousins, we are all in charge of keeping that kind of culture within our family. And even though I'm Mexican, I don't share the same culture as another Mexican citizens because I don't celebrate the same holidays. And I just want to point that out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Roseanne Crawford. Ms. Crawford, can you hear us?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing would please me more than if we had a truly bilingual educational system. Meta, however, is not the way to get there. English speakers will learn and improve their Spanish, but the native Spanish speakers, supposedly the focus of the program, will miss the boat in their English acquisition for lack of immersion in English. They already speak Spanish through immersion at home in their native tongue. So immersing them in Spanish in early years will create an English deficit and will put them behind in their English acquisition. My maiden name was Guerrero. I was raised in a truly bilingual family. My father was from Mexico and only spoke Spanish at home, even after mastering English. He graduated from Cal Poly and became a professor. My mother only spoke English and was of Irish and Norwegian heritage. My father derived great amusement from his daughters translating, taking turns with helping their mother understand some of his subtleties in expressions. We were like little sponges, eager to learn everything. And we all went to college. I wanted to continue this bilingual advantage with our son. We enrolled him in the bilingual program at Roosevelt School. It was the 50% dual language. It didn't work. He didn't learn Spanish, and he got 2 years behind in English, a disaster. My son is a successful chemical engineer, and our daughter is a family provider at Santa Barbara Neighborhood Clinics. She's quite in demand with her Spanish-speaking patients. The notion that you need to lose a language to learn a language is nonsense. Lose your culture? My daughter identifies very closely with the Latin culture, is totally bilingual, even though she's 3rd generation. Thank you, and I hope you really consider putting this widespread, ambitious program rather than just a little trial with just one thing at one school, so that you really do have a unit of measure of success and see how the standardized testing comes out. Thank you for your consideration, and put the kids first and their education.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Sheridan Rosenberg.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Roseanne and Janeth said, as well as Alice Post. It sounds as if, and I really think it's time for us to recognize that kids, we don't even know how much they've lost during this lost year, especially kids who are Hispanic, who are living in very challenging circumstances with limited internet no adult supervision. I really think that this is not the time to implement this program. It's time to shelve this program and focus on assessing where children are and what we need to do. I mean, this is, as far as I'm concerned, we're going to really be in a crisis, just assessing how much kids have lost and what it's going to take to get them back up to speed. But I really take very seriously what Jeanette and Roseanne said about their own personal experiences. Jeanette, who was very successful when it was English immersion at La Colina Junior High School, a junior high school my daughter attended, which was fantastic. And then as soon as she got into San Marcos, she had textbooks in Spanish. And this held her back in life, which is so unfair. And I lay that right at the feet of this district versus Roseanne Crawford, who had English immersion, who's had an enormously successful life for both her and herself and her children. We're not going to lose anything. I'm also very concerned. Are these monies coming out of LCAP? Because if they're coming out of LCAP, I really think that we need to include the County Board of Education on this. LCAP funds, if these monies are coming out of LCAP to pay for it, and I don't know where these monies are coming out of. You know, that money's supposed to be spread district-wide to take care of the needs of the most vulnerable foster kids, English learners, as well as homeless children. It's not to be, you know, bucketed to one program that, in my opinion, right now is right up there with Peabody Stadium. I don't know about you, but when I heard $1 million in change orders for that boondoggle, that stadium to nowhere, that speaks of an incredible lack of oversight. And so does this. I think all eyes are on all of you right now, and this is not the time. And also, you know, Alice Post was right. Why McKinley? Why the only downtown school? I think that this should just, you know, maybe you need to expand Adelante Charter School, provide more room there if parents want, you know, a dual immersion program. Why don't you just expand that and focus on English immersion, literacy, math, and getting those kids up to speed where they need to be. And also, I'd like to comment again, if I don't know who's running the Zoom tonight, but it's pretty awkward speaking to myself on a dark screen instead of seeing your faces when we speak, because we can't be there in person.
Time.
Nice if you could fix that.
Time, thank you. And President Ford, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo. Well, first, Ms. Larios Horton, I just want to commend you on the presentation. I thought the narrative was really great, and we can use that sort of as a guidebook going forward about our programs for our emerging multilingual students. So thank you so much. And also, I was so impressed with the enthusiasm and the focus on the gold standard, and also focus on following the law. So thank you so much. Members of the board, are there any questions or concerns? Please, Ms. Alvarez.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Larios Horton. I'm one of those people that did not lose a language to continue learning a language. I'm an EML student forever for the rest of my life. And I'm happy to say I still speak to my parents almost every day in Espanol, puro Espanol. At school was all English and going home was all Spanish. So I was one of those fortunate ones that was able to keep my maternal language as well as learn a new language. I do have several questions about the presentation, and part of it is probably because I was not part of the board when this was approved. So some of my questions are probably already have been answered. And thank you for your narrative. I read it, and thank you for your answers to all my questions. One question that remains in my mind is, I believe it was goal number 3. There's 4 goals that you showed: bicultural, bilingual, and number 3 was academic achievement. How are we measuring the academic achievement? As you know, I love data. So in looking at our data for 2018, 2019, 65% of our former ELs, which are now EML, were not at grade level. And my wondering is, if some of the students that scored below grade level, are they part of our meta now at Santa Barbara Junior High? Well, right now it's only Santa Barbara Junior High. And how are we going to measure that progress? Because what I would like to see, I like to see progress. I like to see that the students are making their way to meet the standards, and that this program is helping them to meet that standard. So I would like to get some statistics to see how they are doing. In the presentation, maybe I missed it because I was thinking so deeply into this. I didn't see how we are measuring the student progress, the academic progress. So I'd like to, if you could bring that back to us later, I'm very much interested in that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, it seems that most of the students that are going to Santa Barbara Junior High into this program are from Adelante School. And I'm wondering why that is. Is it preference, or are we advertising it enough to other schools? So that's another question I have. So I'll let you answer and then I'll go on.
Absolutely. Those are all excellent questions. I really appreciate them. We will definitely come back to let you know how our students, we have 32 students at Santa Barbara Junior High School, and let you know how things are going for them, right? I think one little asterisk I put there with regard to data is, and this is, I'm just reflecting my opinion, informed opinion, that our state of California has yet to design an assessment system that takes into account our dual language immersion programs. So what we're going to do is use data that perhaps isn't yet aligned to the outcomes and expectations for our dual language immersion program students. However, we can use local assessments and then compare those to what another student who is in a structured English immersion program would be doing, how they would be performing. So using local assessments and then bringing forward some data with some nuance, right, from the state, knowing that, again, we're hoping and expecting that our state of California catches up to Proposition 58 in terms of assessment and accountability.
I agree with that. At the same time, English language arts, there were 60% of our students that were not at grade level, and those were multilingual learners. So our goal is that these students will be proficient in English as well.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
What I'm trying to understand, and again, forgive me because it's maybe you already covered this at other meetings that I wasn't part of, but what I like to understand better is how are we measuring that success to that goal, and how are we going to achieve that goal?
Absolutely, yes. Superintendent Maldonado?
Actually, I like to jump into this conversation because this is something that I've been working on a lot. Let me clarify that when we say 65% of our students who are in elementary grades are not meeting English-only standards on a summative assessment that's designed for an English-only speaker, we are using a very unfair measure to determine intelligence and ability. And so I want to clarify for ourselves as a cabinet, as the board, and the public, that to say a student who has not spoken English in their formative years, 0 to 5, 0 to 6, 0 to 7, will suddenly within a year be at the same level of an English-only speaking child is not a fair assessment. It's comparing apples to oranges. So I've heard for months now since I've arrived here this one metric. And when we reduce a child to one metric, it's an unfair assessment. And so I want to be clear that going forward, we will be looking at this issue. We will be exploring and explaining further. The other thing is there's an assessment called the LPAC, which Mrs. Larios Horton explained earlier, which is a more true assessment of language development over time. That is a new assessment. It has been developed to really measure the child's true development towards reaching proficiency in English. What we did when we were children, when you and I were growing up, is no longer true. When I began to teach, there were no standards. There was no adopted curriculum. We made all this stuff ourselves as teachers. So we can't compare an older traditional system of instruction to what we now know through research and best practices that is better. So I just want to clarify that, because I think it dehumanizes people when we reduce them to one metric. It also is not good for our system to continuously be told your children are not performing well based on one summative metric, when we know it is measured in a language the children yet do not know.
And
so,
thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I sorry to get on my, but I was one of those children, and I was told I wasn't going to be more than a secretary by many of my teachers because of my language, because of my growth and development over time. And I want to be clear that we need to really think about this differently, and we hope to bring this board, our public, and others information so that we can get there. What Maria presented is the gold standard. What we're going to get to is what we can get to with the teachers we currently have. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. And I think being an admin assistant is a great job, by the way.
It is a great ad, but it also didn't take into consideration any of my thoughts or beliefs because I couldn't answer back.
Yes, I know. Believe me, I was in your shoes too. But I want to make sure that we are measuring that somehow, and with your expertise, Ms. Maldonado, is that we are measuring the progress. And that's the part that I'm personally am missing, and maybe it's in the report and I didn't see it.
So it's not
that we are measuring that progress, and you are correct. The CASP is one measure, it's one day, it's not a fair assessment. I agree with you 100% on that. But I do want to know, how are we making sure that the students are making progress in learning English?
So that'll be the LPAC. So Maria was talking, sorry to cut you off. It's the LPAC assessment, and that will be like an apples to apples comparison over time. What we should see is our children making progress in that assessment year to year. And the state has changed the way it was given. And so the timing of that has changed. So those will be the true measures that we can bring you over time. During the pandemic, all our assessment schedules were thrown off.
Yeah, I know.
So please know that that's another mitigating factor. But if we were to take all our EMLs and look at how did you do in the previous year's LPAC and this year's LPAC, that is how you'll know. Only language proficiency then, not content. So then the next question is, so then what will we use for content? So as we look at content assessments, we will need to factor in how much language is used in that assessment. How are the children doing there? And that's where we need to think about what you talked about earlier, which is our bilingual paraprofessionals. How do we develop our integrated ELD lessons so that we can get the children there? Because our goal is bilingual children who are meeting the measures in both. Ideally, all our children could have bilingual education in the beginning until they get to that proficiency. But our goal is that they learn the content and the language.
And the LPAC is performed how often?
Twice a year.
Once a year.
Once a year,
Once a
right?
year.
Mm-hmm.
But in kindergarten, it's given in the beginning and the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in the beginning, it's given a little more often than later.
So, and I'm assuming, right, teachers do assessments in between, not
Absolutely.
just wait for the LCAP. So if a student needs additional support, the student is getting that support, and we don't have to wait for the LCAP.
And that's the development of teachers this district needs to be able to engage in as we move forward, as we look at what our structured English immersion program components of instruction should look like, which is to deliver designated ELD lessons, which was adopted this year in this district. So teacher development in that area, first to how to deliver the instruction, and also then how do we assess that the children learn it. All those are things that we've made progress in this year, but that are just being put in place now that were not true in the past, and please correct me if I'm
This is
saying
true.
that.
No, this is true. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack, and we're happy to be able to do that with all of you whenever needed. I did also want to just speak to the second question. And so why are most of our students from Adelante? Well, it's really important that for a junior high school program, a secondary program, that the students have participated in an elementary dual language immersion program and or show proficiency in the second language. So the current cohort also has newcomer students in it after having tested the students. And so because we don't have any other dual language immersion programs in our district, that is why Santa Barbara Junior High School is almost exclusively our Adelante students. So,
makes sense. I would hate to turn anybody away who wants to be part of that, but I'm sure you have a process for that.
yes.
That's it, Ms. Alvarez? Oh, thank you. Ms. Capps, please.
Thank you, Ms. Larios Horton and Superintendent Maldonado. I found that conversation very helpful, and so thank you to Board Member Alvarez for asking the questions about assessment. I just want to lend my support, Ms. Larios Horton. This is so exciting. I agree with President Ford that your presentation struck the right balance of demonstrating how far we've come, but really that slide where it shows where we are compared to the gold standard, we have a long way to go, and it's daunting. And we only have these 35 kids that are currently part of the DLI program, yet we're building. And so I found myself taking it in with full support, as I have been along the way, that you are, grasping the enormity of what we're trying to do, yet the enthusiasm is there, and to have that expressed by the students at Santa Barbara Junior High is really so exciting. So just want to lend my support, and just also say, I feel as though since we've launched Meta, and even before, you tend to have to give these presentations at like 11 o'clock at night. So I'm just grateful that it's not quite that late, so that you have more of our full attention, because it really is deserving of that full attention, and again, just has my full support. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Munoz.
Yes, brings me back to I think one of my first meetings that I went to was the Meta work group when we met down on Chapala Street. And I'm very excited about this and seeing how it's developed. Our celebration at the last work group meeting was I literally went from being in Zacatecas for 2 weeks and then going to Durango, where I found out that some of my family were, some of my cousins were teachers. And of course, I told them all about the exciting program about Meta and such. And they said, God, we wish we had that here. I want to congratulate you on the progress that was made during the pandemic year, still kept ahead. And the strength of the, not only the language, but the culture, the self-esteem, and as we spoke during the work groups, the increased communication and sensitivity between the students that would come as a result of learning about each other's cultures, being able to communicate, and just, the video said it all. The employability is amazing. My day job is at SenCal Health, where we serve Medi-Cal recipients for Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo County. We have a call center of, about 20 representatives that are all bilingual. We have billing that's, staff that's bilingual and so forth. And we also have interpreting. So the interpreters and translation with the medical field, the legal advocates, immigration and such, is just, tremendous. I mean, I just can't applaud more for, and I'm looking at, as we were saying, more progress on that, more availability to more students, and I'm excited about the ELAC celebration. I'll miss the food and the dancing this year, but I will be there, and I'd love to come to the Super Sábados also. So thank you. Good job.
Thanks so much. I do have a couple questions. One has to do with the gold standard. I am very excited about DLI and at McKinley, but I must admit that I am worried about only 22 students having signed up. So can you validate my concern?
I validate your concern, absolutely. Gosh, it's been a tough year. It's been a tough year. It's been one in which in meeting with other principals in our district, in other schools, to get families to attend certain things is just, there was a little bit of some fatigue around webinars in December and January. And so we know, and we're really sure that with a renewed emphasis on enrollment in this coming month, and with some of the work that our chief communications officer, Cami Barnwell, will be doing with local media, that our Super Sábados will bring out our families, because I mean, you just can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong. The campus, the teachers we've hired, the program that's being developed, we have to do a better job. We have to do a better job, and bringing folks to campus in a really safe way, I think, is going to help. We also know that the trends, as I mentioned, enrollment trends, as I mentioned in my presentation, at McKinley are such that our families come out in the summer to enroll their students. So knowing that, of course, we will do additional outreach efforts for our families in the area. But we're well aware, and are working on an initiative, a campaign initiative for this spring. And I'm pretty confident that the Gold Star program will have the students it needs to move forward.
Great. I really hope so. I do know that, in other programs, sometimes it's required taking to the streets. So
yes,
and even going door to door. So it might be something that we'll consider doing. The other question about McKinley is that I saw that there is a plan to use the reading and writing workshop materials in Spanish. We'll use those in Los Angeles, and they had some, I would say, some major issues with the way that they translated. I wondered if you have been following that, and if you're aware if they're better now, because I want the students to have the very best materials that are out there.
Yes, absolutely. I've had the great fortune of being able to collaborate with Assistant Superintendent Ana Escobedo and our Director Sierra Lockridge to really think about what will work for our program. And you'll see in the write-up that we have two programs that our teachers will be piloting. And one of them is Benchmark Adelante, and the companion Benchmark Taller, which is very similar to our reader-writer workshop, but uses a more formalized curriculum, all the while knowing and understanding that the workshop model does work. And so we're going to lean on those two pilots this coming fall to ensure we make the best choice for our students in that area. And so I'd be happy to share the links to the curriculum with you.
That'd be great.
I have those now today that I could share with you. And then also, you're welcome to come to McKinley, speak with our principal and the teachers with regard to how they have carefully reviewed the materials. So I hope that answers your question, and if not, we're happy to follow up with you.
We do have both principals online if there are any
Correct.
questions for the principals.
I think it would be helpful for me to receive the links, and I really appreciate the offer. I guess the other question I have is about the silver standard. I guess that's what I'm going to call structured English immersion, because even though we have these 2 gold standard programs underway or close to being underway, we still have 1,900 kids who are EMLs, and they're in other schools and in other grade levels. So I would love to just, at some point, if not tonight, just find out more about designated and integrated plans for instruction. I think aside from the fact that we know assessments are not great, we have got to do a better job, and it starts with curriculum and it starts with training teachers. So I'm begging you for those 1,900 students that we don't leave them behind.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
I second that, Kate. Can you also send me the links?
Yes. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns from board members? If not, thank you again for this inspiring program and inspiring presentation. That leads us to H on our agenda, and there are no consented items that we needed to have further discussion on, so we'll move on to coming events. That's I. Board members, please take a quick look at this list again and let me know now or before our next board meeting of any events that you would like to add. And then we'll go on to J, which is future agenda items. And so again, I want to thank Ms. Maldonado and Ms. Trujillo for always keeping these items up to date. Board members, would you like to add anything for consideration on a future agenda? You can also let us know of that at another time. I will say that April looks very full. Are there any others? Yes, please, Ms. Capps.
Yes, as we discussed, I'd like to add the sustainability position as a future agenda item.
Thank you.
And secondly, unless it's on here, I would like to add at some point that's relevant in the future, the armory.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Alvarez.
For a future agenda item, and one of the questions I get quite often and I don't have an answer is, what type of support or training program do we have in place for our special education paraprofessionals? And so I'd like to hear more about that in a future agenda item, not tonight, it's after 10. Thank you.
I wouldn't allow you to ask that question anyway. It's not on the agenda. I know. Thank you. Anything? Okay, great. Let's go on to letter K. Our next meeting is on Tuesday, April 6th, and that is the first regular board meeting for April. We'll begin at 6:30, and at this time, the plan is for public participation to be by Zoom only. So finally, as we adjourn tonight, I want to thank everyone again who worked so hard to ensure that this board has timely information to be thoughtful and also compliant with all rules and regulations. I'm also grateful for the continuing participation of our community in board issues, whether through emails, phone calls, meetings, committees, or by attending in Zoom. And I just want to say, remember, in the words of another inspiring woman in the month of March, Helen Keller said, "A bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the turn." So with that, please continue to stay safe, as Ms. Maldonado said, so we stay in the red and move to the orange soon. Be positive, never lose hope, and keep making the turn in this crazy road. The meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District School Board is now adjourned. Good evening.